Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the August 10th, 2022, 7 o'clock meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Board. Thank you for all for coming. The meeting will be conducted in person, as you can see, but also via remote. However, the remote is an option. If the internet goes down, the meeting continues. I believe we have, at least one member remote.
Anita.
Oh, and Anita, that's two members remote.
Erica.
Oh, everybody's here. Okay, in one form or another.
Tim's online.
Tim's online. He couldn't get coverage tonight. So, with that said, and you will all be aware that we are on Chelmsford Telemedia.
That works.
First up, we have a couple of administrative items. Administrative review, 314 Dunstable Road. That's a Form G, confirmatory lot release.
Yeah, I believe someone representing the applicant is with us this evening.
Okay.
Yes, Beth Ahern from Iliopolis, representing Dunstable Edge LLC.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just briefly, last month, we requested a release of 4 of the 6 lots at Nadnasset Drive, and which the board granted, and we recorded that release. However, at the time we made the request, we weren't 100% aware of the sequencing of septic installations and closings. And now that more time has passed, we've realized that instead of having lot 5 released, we would request that lot 4 be released, and then lot 5, we would request a confirmatory and have lots 1, 2, 3, 4 released, and not 5 and 6. And so that's the request tonight.
Okay. Doesn't sound particularly earth-shattering. What's still to be done?
There's miscellaneous punch list items. If you
Okay.
recall, this was approved as to be a publicly
Right.
accepted way. So final paving,
Okay, so it's got its
street trees, some,
it's got a code on it, but
Yep, yeah, so as the attorney mentioned, your performance guarantee is the remaining lot.
okay.
And a lot is,
Yeah,
worth at least
whatever it
300.
is. Oh yeah, it's worth well more than the paving, I suspect. Okay. Anybody on the board?
Evan, do we have engineering concurrence on releasing these?
No, primarily because we're all aware that there's a punch list and there's adequate surety.
And there's adequate assurity?
Right.
Okay.
Anybody else? Tim, Anita, anybody out there in?
I have nothing.
Okay. Well, in that case, I will accept a motion to do what's been requested.
I would make a motion that we release lots 1 through 4 at 314 Dunstable Road, and hold the release of lots 5 and 6. Is that correct?
Lot
It's just 5.
Just lot 5, okay. And hold the release of lot 5.
All right, I have a motion. Second by Mike. We got plenty of seconds. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, you're all set.
Thank you very much.
Sure. All right, next one's an A&R at 270 Billrica Road. Request to create 2 conforming lots utilizing existing frontage. I can tell you why this is happening, but I don't think there's...
I think you should have someone.
Yeah. Is there
representative.
somebody here from the proponent wants to discuss?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Douglas DeShane from Finner and Nicholson.
As you've stated, my clients have submitted an A&R plan with respect to the property at 270 Billrica Road, and you are correct, there is no surprise why this was done.
That,
But it was done within the law.
Yep.
And I believe our plan meets all of your rules and regulations. We'd
Sure.
ask that you please consider signing it. Thank
sure
you.
looks like it. Yeah. For those unaware, this takes that area and gets it out from under potential change in the zoning bylaw this fall.
So effectively, it provides guaranteed grandfathering of
Yeah,
it
that provides guaranteed grandfathering.
to the existing bylaws for how long?
Right,
3 years for
3 years.
uses only.
yeah. Okay. I mean, I can see from the TV screen that it meets all A&R requirements. Any other comments from the board? All right.
I move that we endorse the A&R number 678 for 270 Billrica Road with no determination of zoning.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We got 2 seconds. Yeah, I'll let Tim have that one. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, it carries. Got the A&R. Next up, we're going into a continued public hearing. Oh, by the way, we got the administrative stuff out of the way. Why don't I take public input now? That's a convenient time before we start getting into the hearings. Does anybody wish to give us public input? Please note that it should not be on something that's currently before the board. This would be a more general topics. It's all yours. Hi, Brian.
Brian Latina, Precinct 9, Town Meeting Rep, 15 Jesse Road is my address. In effect, this is kind of related to the one that you just had. I received a email from your, I guess your board indirectly, with a string of emails correcting the record. I think all of you were copied on it the day after I made a statement.
Yes.
About that. And today I checked on the facts of the matter. It was related to a different property. And I found that the property I was referring to was $141 per square foot, to 2 stories,
Okay.
our tax benefit, if you will. And a warehouse is typically only 1 story, although I guess you could put a second story on it. I've been involved with one with 3 stories, but it's very odd.
You sometimes see them with offices on the second floor and warehouse on the first.
That's
that
right,
kind of
but
thing.
typically it's not the full size of the building. And anyway, there's the examples the assessor gave me, and because the letter sent with all of you copied, mentioned they wanted to keep the record accurate, and the assessor is always accurate according to the note that I had. I'm surprised that that's the case, but okay. So the assessor gave me documentation on the most recent warehouse built in town that's showing about $70 per square foot.
Okay.
At town meeting, I mentioned that when we passed the CIOD, and actually even I went back and reviewed the center district, overlay district, and there was direct discussion about what we expected as town meeting members, and I don't know if that was part of the challenge. And again, the reason I'm discussing this is because I was told that there were misstatements by me. So to correct, I guess the only misstatement was a tax one, where we thought that the warehouse would be a less benefit to the town. That's true. It's somewhere between $55 a square foot tax and $70 a square foot tax, depending on the accoutrements of the building, instead of $141 per square foot. At town meeting, when we passed this overlay district, that particular property, and I believe 8 others, were assumed to possibly have 90-foot buildings in there. I believe that was 6 stories. So if you take $141 a square foot in the current building I was discussing, there's 2 floors.
Yeah.
So you could argue that that footprint on the ground, should you tear down the building and put something else there and didn't replace it with the same size, 2 stories, you're not just losing $140 per square foot, you're losing
the other space, yeah.
$280 a square foot, and taking another step to what town meeting was being sold, to pass that bylaw, to cover that area and to generate revenue for the town, which was town meeting's responsibility to make that change to the zoning. We would be losing 6 floors, perhaps, in a Class A building versus a 1-floor warehouse that's perhaps 20 or 40,000 square feet. 20 by right, 40,000 if you pass a special permit. So I would use great caution in making any determinations with regard to that based on the letter that I received. And if there are other misstatements done by me or the other town meeting rep speaking, that we didn't understand what we had voted on and reported back to this board, I would love to hear those.
Okay.
Okay? And finally, I'm very concerned. I do see there's some jockeying of applications. When you file an application with the planning board, you're supposed to have a complete application. That was discussed in another project. It needs to be full, it needs to be complete. You're supposed to tell the benefit of the town, what the town is, and I do have an application here that does not complete, it's not complete. You shouldn't have to do the research. The developer should do the research.
Yeah, that is very true.
And I would appreciate if you would follow through with that and make sure that this meeting is open and each one of these projects that comes to you, the application is complete. And when they apply and put a different application in to jockey around, like maybe I saw tonight, that's probably a different application and it needs to come back to you again. And the public should be told about it in advance. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And anybody else like a shot at the mic?
Brian, I don't understand what jockeying proposal are you discussing?
I think it may be, maybe some stuff that's on the agenda that you probably should
Okay,
stay away
I
from.
want to use,
Yeah, you can answer the question. You doesn't have to talk about the project, just what.
yeah,
But it should be discussed under the project if it's applicable to a project that's on the agenda tonight, not in the open session.
yeah, I guess I'll answer it as a town meeting rep.
Okay.
When town meeting represents the town, and I talked about that last time, the town is us, the residents of the town, taxpayers and people that live here now. Developers and everybody else that wants to move into our town, that's great, God bless them. But the planning board is supposed to represent us, and when town meeting comes up with a warrant article to adjust something that we believed was protected, and when I look at the CEIOD in the center district as an example, we had complete discussion, go watch the video, about, for example, housing in the center. It's not going to happen. Don't worry about 5 parking spaces, 3 versus 5 units for a visitor space, because you're not doing any housing development. First project in there was housing. Second project that's going in is housing. Same thing in this other district. When we established that other district, it was for the purpose of generating revenue. So when we go in and we help the developer adjust to our zoning, what you're essentially doing is hurting, I'm going to say me, the town. That zoning is based on a long-term view.
I understand the overarching argument you're making, but you were talking about that there was a bait and switch.
There was April 24th, I believe, there was a discussion about a particular warehouse in town.
Okay, fine.
I believe that was the
That's
date. And it came in under a different application, I believe. May 25th, another application was made. And then tonight I see that we're doing a really neat legal representation that our town attorney suggested in a meeting that this board was just at last. I get it, I understand it, but you also have to recognize that it's kind of inappropriate to say, here's the way around our rules. You're supposed to protect the town. If you don't, you're hurting my property and the value of my property. Turnpike Road, there's no easement on either side of the pavement, per the previous town manager. None. You can't put a sidewalk down that road without buying property. You can't even put a bike lane down that line. So I've been told. I assume the town manager was speaking properly.
Okay, thank you.
This is the kind of thing that those of us living in the area know about.
Okay.
Thanks, Brian. All right. That looks like it for public input. Okay. And then let's get into some of the bigger things. The next thing up is a continued public hearing for 150, 152 Dalton Road. This is the, for the 40 by 60 detached building exceeding 900 feet. We've discussed this at a couple of meetings. We received a fairly detailed packet. Got it today. It actually looks very useful, but none of us have had the opportunity. I managed to skim it, but I would not count on my
I did not.
ability
Haven't seen
to.
it.
Yeah, there's 20 some odd pages. That being the case,
It didn't meet the deadline.
I would suggest that we continue in order to give some time to consider it. I would like to continue. I presume you're the attorney?
I am.
Why don't you step up and say your bit?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a few years since I've been in Chelmsford. With my tail
Come back.
between my legs, Pam Brown and Brown.
Yeah.
Planner and attorney. I got brought onto this project at a very busy time and with vacation in the middle and
Understand.
kind of scrambled to put together something I thought might be useful. I would ask your indulgence and consideration to allow me to walk, and I understand
Yeah.
you may need to continue this hearing, but I would love for you to give me a little leeway to just walk through. A lot of this is illustrative, some graphics that I think would be helpful, and if I could be allowed to walk you through those items, and I know at least one of the abutters is here as well, I think it would help just kind of paint a picture and give you a better understanding
No,
of
I
what's
think that's quite
proposed.
reasonable. Why don't you go through it?
Okay.
It does not mean that we'll
Understood.
actually act on it tonight, but,
Understood.
it'll get us started at least.
Yep, and, I put the exhibits together and then went back and wrote the cover letter and managed to finally get them off to Evan. So let me show, Evan, if you could actually scroll to the first graphic. I'm going to start really basic kind of orientation. So this first slide is really just show you the parcel in context of the neighborhood. It's 150 to 152 Dalton Road. Abutters are, in fact, residential all around, but this is a property, and I know this is one of the issues that's been brought up, but a property that has been used for decades for both residential and non-residential uses. Next slide, if you would, Evan, sorry. So this was actually a real engineer's plot plan, but with my planner graphics added to it, just to give a little really brief flavor of sort of what's there and what's proposed. I will get to some of the greater detail. The kind of tanned colored area is really sort of a circulation pattern of unpaved surface, really hard-packed soil, gravel. The green, and it's a little bit hard to distinguish the two different greens, but Luc Fougere, who's with me this evening, the property owner, is intending to actually, as part of the project, to expand, and really nothing that needs your approval, but I wanted to give a context of kind of where we're going. So the yard is intended to be extended another about 16 feet by about 100 feet in width to give the family a little bit more yard area. And then skip through. Next, I guess go to the barn picture. This is a letter actually in advance of this first public hearing. I don't think we need to read it, but it is in your package. Luke had written to everyone on the abutters list in advance of the meeting and went out actually talking to his immediate neighbors to try to let them know what he was doing. Next slide is, try to go through some of this very quickly. Just an illustration of the barn that's proposed. And the idea here is to replace a number of almost dilapidated buildings on the site. The top photo here is the home where Luke and his wife and children live. The rear yard has a small yard, swimming pool, and that's what we want to extend. If you pause there, yeah. So got out finally a couple of days ago to visit the site, take some pictures. Luke was a little embarrassed. He'd been on vacation and said it's messier than I normally keep it. But part of the reason for constructing the barn is actually intended to be able to consolidate and neaten up the site. So here, this is the top photo is sort of the rear yard along looking, that tall stand of pine trees is the property line that abuts 79 Linwood. The lower slide is some of the stone storage. In the right, you can see, if you could see it, one of the sheds that's really not in great shape. The dirt pile to the rear is really the corner that abuts the property at 77 Linwood. You can go down to the next slide, Evan. Again, this is looking kind of across the site towards a existing shop and then the house behind. So that shop is one, and if you can see my little blue X's, there are 3 or 4, 2 are kind of connected, garage or shed buildings. The shop is just behind that orange piece of equipment. That would stay up long enough to get the new building built, but the functions of that shop, as well as the storage that's happening in all of these sheds, would all be consolidated into the new barn, as well as, in fact, you see on the lower slide, a number of wheelbarrows, other equipment. All of that would now be able to be stored inside rather than out. The barn is also serving as a really space for the family as well. The house does not have a garage, so it would have space, hobby space and some storage space, as well as a lift so Luke can work on his own vehicles. And again, these remaining slides show you kind of the condition of the buildings and the site, a couple of the landscape trailers. I think you got, let's see, get ahead of me, and a couple of the vehicles. Now, I wanted to, yes, that's great. So this is a Google Maps aerial photo that we believe is 2021, 2022, so pretty much current condition. You'll see that luckily for the neighborhood, fairly heavily vegetated around the perimeter property lines. The next slide, I'm going to walk you from current backwards. So this is 2021, and again, if you can see them, I've got some blue X's on top of the buildings proposed to come down. The green on there is actually the shop, the current shop that would be relocated to the barn, would become part of the new yard area when we expand that yard area. And then all of the other centrally located sheds, there's 3 of them, would be removed, and the new barn structure goes pretty much right on top of those. Next slide. Make a mental vision of sort of the purpose of this is to show you sort of the extent of the developed site, the gravel circulation, the extent of where there's storage of stone or materials or equipment or vehicles. This next slide that you're looking at is 2014. And then if you scroll down, we are at, these are all from your town GIS using just the overlays for the aerial overlays, 2011, 2012. And then finally, the last one is back to 2004, where you can see pretty much the entire site was open. I think it's probably more vegetated around. Some of this could be partly time of year that the photos are taken, but the stands of trees are tall, and many of them are evergreen. Luke has been installing some, with cooperation with the neighbors, an agreement of the neighbors, he's been installing some very attractive fencing along common property lines. And I think overall, the neighbors have been extremely happy. I did not intend tonight to be a deliberation of whether this property is grandfathered or not.
Okay.
What I wanted to do was just put before you a couple of things, and I'll just tell you what they are without going into the details. But there's quite a bit of, call it circumstantial evidence, but documentation that I expect much of it is in the building department files related to the prior use of this property, going back well before 1955, I believe. I can't pronounce the name, but Bertolacini was the gentleman who was in this, that had Anthony's garden. He, despite the name of the business, was doing snow plowing, was doing a lot of landscaping, but also hardscape. So he also had the stone storage and vehicles and so forth. Before that, there were permits. There was actually a permit granted in 1955 to expand an existing use that might have been a little bit more vegetation oriented, but as you likely know, non-conforming uses often kind of grow and morph over time with modern, I think in 1950 we were only landscaping with plants. We weren't building patios. We weren't, and it's all kind of part of the same business. It's changed over time. I did include here one letter from the Chelmsford Building Department from 1994 that confirmed the landscape business use of the property. What I omitted from this package, which I'm sure you have, but happy to submit, is Sean Shanahan had actually submitted, and it was part of Luke's due diligence before he bought the property in 2018. So that one's not in this package, but readily available, and I can send it over. Luke, before he bought the property, did significant due diligence over, not a day, but weeks probably, to make sure there was documentation provided to the building department sufficient for the building department to actually issue a zoning letter saying that the use was a vested use and he was okay to do what he wanted to do here. That was necessary for his own purposes as well as the bank that was lending him money to purchase the property in 2018. And he's been in here operating, with his uses since then. Historically, Luke actually had a more significant and probably more intensive use of his business, which included lawn maintenance, 13 or so employees. He now has 4. So in terms of intensity of the use that would continue here, it's pretty much 4 people coming in Monday through Friday, by 7 a.m., picking up a truck, loading it, and going out for the day and returning sometime between 2 and 4 in the afternoon. Occasionally Saturdays, never on Sunday. With that, I think most of the neighbors, again, the immediate abutters have chimed in. We've, again, just over the last day or two, have gotten a number of support letters that are included in your package. I don't need to read them all, but I think very supportive letters, not just saying I'm okay with it, but really you've been a good neighbor, and so on and so forth. Those come from 148 Dalton, which is an immediate abutter. 156 Dalton, which is an immediate abutter, and then Stedman has abutters that back, the backs of their properties back up to the side of this property. So the Hogans at 44 Stedman, the Kellys at 42 Stedman, and little, I guess, so those 2, I feel like I'm missing one, but there are 5 anyway in your package of support letters from these neighbors. I don't want to ramble. There's a lot more I could say. I'm sure there's a lot more Luke could say, but I'll pause and maybe respond to any questions you have.
Any questions from the?
Just while the board is contemplating, so at your first meeting, hearing, you had requested that you wanted written input from the building commissioner.
Right.
So he has been in the process of doing that. A couple of days ago, the attorney representing the abutter submitted a formal request for zoning determination. My understanding is that Jose, the building commissioner, is reviewing both packets from both attorneys, is engaged with town council, and that letter should be issued shortly.
Okay, but it's in process.
It's in process,
So
correct.
in any case, we really need to wait until that gets to us. So I think there will be a continuance
My
here.
second point is that council's been engaged, as I said. Council emailed me late this afternoon and basically said that the planning board should not take any final action.
Yeah,
this
I
evening,
understand
Which I
that.
think.
Yeah, while it's under consideration, you know, while the lawyers are sending emails back and forth.
That said, I am in conversation with Attorney Henry Dane, who represents the abutter.
Okay,
that has
good.
raised the issue and
All right, so,
continue conversations.
so I think you're homing in on what the crux of this is. As you'll recall from the conversation, the last time we looked at this, the basic issue had to do, well, there are two. There's the matter of the degree to which the use is grandfathered, and there clearly is some grandfathering, and the degree to which the use is or might be expanded. Expansion of the use is kind of the key issue here, and you know, and it depends on how you look at it. I understand that. So you should probably be
That's why
prepared.
we
to-
have a job.
Yeah, so we should probably discuss that when we take this up on a continued
Yep.
hearing. In the
I will-
meantime, I'll-
if I could just make one
Yeah.
other comment regarding whether there's expansion. I would suggest to you that construction of this barn in itself doesn't necessitate being an expansion. The
Right.
use is the use. We're really, this is cleanup and consolidation. I mean, the structure may be larger than the combination of all the little
Yeah.
things, but the idea is not to grow the business anymore. It's not, and I think that may be part of the issue with one of
Yeah.
the neighbors. Luke's goal is not to create a
Understood,
huge garage
understood,
so it can keep
understood.
growing. So,
Okay.
again, I understand it's probably further later discussion, but.
Okay, very good. I think we have our arms around it at least. Any further questions from the board? Then, I don't know, the best thing may very well be to just do the continuance now, which I think we're probably inclined to do.
I think the other lawyers.
We have
I
another.
appreciate you indulging us at least
Okay.
in making a presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to see you.
I think the applicant wants to say a word.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just briefly.
Step on up and, go through the rigmarole, tell us who you are, even though we know.
You know my address.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time again, thank you. Just touching on the expansion thing,
Yeah,
we're big enough as it is, which is not large.
okay.
I had 15 to 20 employees before we moved here. We chopped that down to 4 that come in every day, Monday through Friday. I've got a family. I want to get home to them. I still love my wife.
Yeah,
So the last thing I want to do is more.
okay,
I want to do less in one area.
okay.
So, there is zero talk on my end whatsoever, and
Understood.
I can put under oath, I don't want to be larger.
Okay.
I don't, whatsoever.
Okay, very good.
But I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. We'll
nonetheless.
consider that. Evan, is this a situation in which it is conceivable in granting the permit, if we were to do so, that a condition could be put on,
No.
perhaps? Huh?
No, I want to see zoning determination.
Well, we're gonna have to see that,
A
too.
very, very succinct zoning determination on this.
Okay,
Before I go forward, because I'm not buying it right now.
okay. Well, I think that's in the works. We'll see where that goes. I'm just looking for
End
what
of
the
your
alternatives
question?
might be. Huh?
What was that? the end
Well,
of
what
the
I was
question?
asking whether and this is strictly hypothetical, if something were to be granted, would we be in a position to put conditions on it that would effectively guarantee no expansion?
Yeah, you can put conditions on.
Yeah, I
it.
mean, the things like no number of employees,
Sure.
perhaps, or things like
You know,
that.
and the applicant can also consider voluntarily adding covenants and restrictions.
Yeah, I mean, and so I mention that now because with the attorney in the house, that's the person who would probably be drafting some of that. Okay, that gives you some idea of some of the things that we might want to consider at a continued hearing.
Thank you.
Okay.
May I have just 2
Sure.
minutes?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm
And-
Henry Dane, and I was here last time.
Yep.
We spoke about this. This was a nice package that's been put together, but much of it, I think, is irrelevant. I agree that what we are really looking for is some restriction on the commercial activities on this property. And if there is some way that we can get that, either through a special permit of some kind that would impose conditions, which may not be something that would fall within your normal scope of special permits, but would become binding once the appeal period expired. I've done that in the past. Or if we could deal with it in terms of some kind of restrictive covenant or agreement between the parties that would be run with the land.
Yeah.
That could be a satisfactory solution. Our concern is not what the applicant intends to do now or may intend to, because things change. Other people might own the property. You make a decision. It may mean somebody else may not have a family they love and want to come home to. So, but also the fact from a matter of zoning has absolutely nothing to do with how long this activity has been going on, because it isn't like something under Section 8 where structures get grandfathered after 10 years. Uses never get grandfathered unless they were commenced before the more restrictive zoning was passed. And even though Mr. Bertolini carried on a business there since, I think, 1994, the zone, that it was a residential zone prior to that date, and therefore it could not be grandfathered just by being
Just by its
pursued.
existence, yeah.
And it's very clear that the zoning was residential prior to that, because Mr. Barrett, was it?
Yeah.
The one who had the floral shop? Bennett, in 1984, had to get a home occupation permit to sell flowers. So it's clear that it was in 1984, 10 years before Mr. Bertolini came along, it was a residential zone, and probably long before that. So it doesn't get grandfathered by virtue of the activity.
No, it would need some a variance or something.
Well,
that's what.
So anyway, but anyway, what's going to happen, I assume, is we're going to get a decision from the building inspector, and then we'll deal with what we get.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, that certainly is a big part of it.
And I'm enjoying my trips to Chelmsford.
It's a nice town, we like it.
It is, yes, it is, and you have a nice room here and a nice bunch of people, and I enjoy coming here. I can't do any of this in my own town because of a conflict of interest,
Yeah,
and I could go other places and do it. So, we'll see you soon.
Come back often, and thank you. And so, it sounds to me as if we've got given everybody an idea of what we need. Anybody want to add anything?
Yeah, I guess I do. So I guess my concern, and the reason that I really want to see a formal statement from the building inspector on interpretation, is that the floral shop was non-exempt agricultural use, which is permitted in our residential zones. This is a contractor yard, which is not permitted in our residential zones. Now, this might be looked at as a home occupation as opposed to an industrial use, which, as opposed to the florist shop that was a commercial use. But if it's considered a home occupation, there's a whole lot of limitations on how many people can work there and what kinds of trucks we can have, and this business doesn't fit into that. So unless they actually have a variance, a use variance, which we don't give out, nobody's really authorized to give those, that occurred sometime between the florist shop and now, I don't believe that we've got a legitimate usage here that we can approve a building against. So that's just why I'm concerned about this and why I really truly need to see Jose's interpretation on this. Evan, if you could feed my concerns back to Jose
Certainly.
for his consideration as he makes this finding. I would appreciate it.
Sure.
Good.
Can I just offer, if you'd like them, I had printed a bunch of paper copies of my package. If anybody would like paper copies, I'm happy to.
I wouldn't mind a paper copy.
I'd
I'd
like that.
Backpack and carry it along, and then we
No.
certainly have one more person who would like to speak, and we'll certainly
I
give you
didn't
your
want to,
opportunity
but-
to do so.
And
You can,
I printed it out in color.
you already did, all right. Let me just leave you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love the projection because it makes life. a lot
I'm going to
easier.
read it electronically. It's just more paper.
And then the one other thing that I had omitted, I actually do have copies of, is the prior building inspectors. I'll leave you that.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, well, thank you.
I appreciate you indulging me.
We'll split.
It happens.
Here we go.
Okay, we have, I believe,
Do you want a continuance?
well, we'll get a continuance, but there, it looked as if we might have another speaker. If we do, I want to give him a shot. I think we've covered the topic. But realizing that we will probably continue after that.
So one more gentleman.
Go ahead.
Good evening, my name is Jack Luskin. I live at 34 Stedman Street in Chelmsford, which is on the same street as the proposed complex as the complex that's proposed to be built. A couple of points. Before this whole thing started, I didn't even know that there was anything going on there, other than the trucks back and forth, just small dump trucks. My wife mentioned at the last meeting that we live on Stedman Street, which over the many years we've lived there has gotten busier and busier and busier, more and more heavy 18-wheelers, and now we have 18-wheeler super tankers, which is like almost twice the length of a regular 18-wheeler. What I find interesting is that in that previous meeting and so far in this meeting, there has been no mention of traffic and the neighbors. You mentioned that you've gone to your immediate neighbors, and they seem to say you're doing a great job. I don't know, I haven't seen your yard. All I'm interested in is the fact that there is a potential for more truck traffic if you expand your operation. The other day, I walked out of my house and down to the end of my driveway, and there's an 18-wheeler blocking Dalton Road trying to back into your yard. That's one, and you haven't geared up yet. So there's a definite possibility and even probability that that's going to happen. In your previous statements, the last meeting, you talked about neighbors saying what a great job you've done. You've talked to a lot of the neighbors, heads up. You never came to us. We haven't heard from you.
I sent you a letter.
You did send us a letter, and if you could put the picture that you had in yours of the proposed drawing, you saw the picture? What a great picture, what a beautiful building. It's located somewhere in Iowa, I think, although in Iowa, I'm not sure they have waterfalls on the end of the property. I mean, that's a little disingenuous. To have your kids sign the letter, more disingenuous. Last meeting,
Family business.
yeah, and your kids are legally operating in the business?
We're living in front of the property.
Okay.
Okay, well,
So anyway, last meeting, you asked him, what is he going to be using all that space for? And he said, I don't know. So I just sort of, out of curiosity, looked to see what the property cost, $600,000, plus whatever it would cost you to build this. And you look like a pretty sharp guy. You're not going to do all that, spend all that money, and not have a clue what you're going to do with it. I'm sorry.
I'm already doing it.
yeah.
Well,
I've been doing it.
Hold on,
For
hold
4
on
years.
here a second.
So, I'm just-
What we're interested in is factual information that we can use to make a determination.
okay.
And I think we've got your point.
especially the traffic.
Yeah, okay, traffic is your
To be
concern.
very clear, we've been doing it for 4 years. So.
But
we-
not with,
Let's not debate it right now, particularly because we're going to continue, and we're going to have more information, I hope,
Since you don't.
by our
know,
next
we
meeting.
have been there
well,
for
quick
4
question,
years.
we haven't gotten, or haven't seen any of the information that has been handed in.
It's,
How do we
it's,
do
it's in the files, you get a hold of Evan, you can see what's been submitted. And we'll be glad to, and there's, yeah, take a copy. Hey, Brian.
Brian Latina, Precinct 9, Town Meeting Rep. Just for your information, we lost a Chelmsford resident July 22nd from a fire. He died
Yes.
in a fire on Stern Street. And if you look at the global map of that, he also had a contractor yard. He did a spray painting business from the photos. I don't know if it was permitted or whatever. But our residential areas and zoning is residential for part of that reason. It doesn't have the same requirements as an IA district, a light industrial
For
district.
safety, yeah.
For safety purposes, OSHA purposes, neighbor purposes, and for your children in and around heavy equipment, our residential areas should be residential. And I assume this board looks at zoning seriously and understands that we shouldn't continue zoning just because it was there before. And once we're identifying areas that are not appropriate for the neighborhood, we need to do something about it. Number of employees, a lot of things are changing. There's a warehouse in my neighborhood as well, in their garage. I get it. But once you start bringing trucks and equipment in, and perhaps gasoline, diesel, other things that are required for these things, it's more
Okay,
dangerous. So something.
okay, well, we have two questions.
Zoning is zoning.
What is the current status, and what would the status be going forward? And we're looking, both, they're somewhat separated, we're looking at both of them.
Okay, and you agree zoning is zoning? It's an
Well-
absolute until you change it.
Well, it is, although it very often has mechanisms in it, variance-type mechanisms or whatever you tend to call them. So we have to look at that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, I would accept a motion to continue. When would be a good date?
September 14th. is your
September
next.
14th? Can you guys do September 14th?
Yes.
Okay.
It's on the eve of a trip to Spain, but yeah.
On the eve of a trip to Spain. Well, it's better than the day you got back jet-lagged.
Yes, probably.
Okay, very good. I would accept such a motion.
Motion to continue the application of 150, 152 Dalton Road to September 14th.
Okay. Do I have a second? Second by Deirdre. All in favor? Aye. Good. Got you. Anita, any opposed? Nope. Okay. So we are continued, and I think everybody's got an idea of what it is we need to collect for information here. All right. The next one is 270 Billerica Road. I guess they're looking for appropriate permits to demolish an existing structure and build a 85,000 square foot industrial warehouse.
Didn't we just separate this?
So,
Yeah, no, we authorized we recommended,
So does this plan,
we determined it was applicable
what do we
to,
do with this plan now, is my question.
well, they haven't separated it yet.
The hearing continues.
hearing
Hearing
continues, yes,
continues.
it's not relevant.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. Douglas DeShane from Finner and Nicholson, representing DH Properties Holdings. Here on a continued hearing with respect to our proposal for 270 Billerica Road. With me this evening, Casey Ferrera, Katie Enright, and Kerry Pike from Howard Stein Hudson, as well as Michael Bennett, representative of DH Properties Holding. We are back before you. I believe our last hearing was in June. late June.
Yeah.
Time flies. But we have been busy since we last met. During our first hearing, you did raise a number of very specific questions, just a couple, and I'd like to answer those first. And then, with your approval, we will move into a discussion of traffic and also the engineering peer review. But as I said, I'd like to start with a couple of sort of minor questions that were asked at the last hearing. And the first one was a suggestion whether we had or we would consider moving the docks that are currently proposed to the right side of the building to the back of the building. And I did discuss that with my client after the last meeting, and I was informed that, in fact, the engineers, when they first looked at this site and tried to design it, they too wanted to put the docks in the back for obvious reasons. However, given the size of the site and the requirement for fire access and parking and everything, quite frankly, I've been told there just is not enough space to put the docks in the back. We wouldn't be able to meet a lot of the other requirements, safety, and things like that. So we did spend significant time doing that. And again, I asked the client to reconsider and to provide me an indication of why we didn't do that, and there's the answer. We did try, but physically it's not available to us. And I know that Casey and Katie are here, could provide you more detailed engineering background in that, but suffice to say, that was our hope too, but it doesn't work physically. We then had another discussion, and questions were raised about the fact that with the docks on the right side, it was visible from Billerica Road, visible from traffic going by, and that was something we were trying to avoid. So we, based on your questions and concerns, went back and and redid our landscaping. And I will have Casey give you the specifics of that, but I think you'll see we've made a good effort to hide those docks and hide the trailer parking area from Billerica Road and from surrounding properties. Also, you asked us to look at the architecture of the building. There were some comments that perhaps our building looked too much like a warehouse and didn't necessarily fit in with the character of the neighborhood. So we, again, took a step back and have redesigned the outside of the building. And again, I think you'll see that we've done a lot of work there, and I'll have Mr. Bennett go over that in just a minute. In fact, I think what I should do is probably let Casey come up and go over the landscaping with you, and then I'll let Mr. Bennett come up and go over the architecture with you, and then we'll step back and talk about traffic and peer review, if that's acceptable to the board.
All right.
Good evening, Casey Ferrero with Howard Stein Hudson. As Doug mentioned, one of the major concerns of the previous meeting was the loading bays being on the right side of the building rather than the back. And it was discussed to provide landscaping or some kind of measure to prevent a visual sightline to that loading bay. There's the pointer here. So down in the south corner of the property, right around the trailer loading, the trailer parking, and the trailer loading bays, we provided an arborvitae lined berm. The landscape berm is approximately 2 feet from the road level, but 4 feet from the trailer parking spaces. So it provides a little bit of a vertical buffer as well as with arborvitaes on top. Another element that we've added was a screening wall. It comes off the building. Comes off the building right here. It goes directly adjacent to where the loading bays will be. So the combination with the arborvitaes going almost up to the driveway with the screening wall coming off the building, the sight line that would actually access to the loading bays or the trailer parking is pretty cut off. We've provided a rendering. Evan, if you go down to the next slide. So this rendering is coming from Billerica Road, from the Route 3 section of Billerica Road, coming down. And you can see the line of arborvitaes with the berm that's raised up off of the road, as well as the screening wall that comes off the building. And it's essentially proposed to just be another architectural element off the building and look as the same as the other panels of the building. We've also added a good amount of landscaping in front of that screening wall to basically maintain a landscaped aesthetic look. So as far as landscaping, those are the major updates in order to kind of achieve that visible or that visual element that you guys were looking for. If we would like to bring up the architecture.
I'm sorry, the landscaping in the front, is that gonna be lawn?
The landscaping in front of the building itself.
Yeah, in front of the arborvitaes, right? Is that?
So the arborvitaes are this line here. There is basically a lawn berm that'll go up about 2 feet from the roadside.
Right, but in this rendering, right where your pointer is right now, that's the.
This is lawn.
Landscaping that you were talking about, that will be lawn, that was my
That will be
question.
lawn, yep, and then the arborvitaes are behind it.
Okay.
And then Evan, I believe the next slide should be the elevations that Michael will talk to, unless you want to talk to the rendering first.
Rendering, probably. It's some color, it's easier.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Michael Bennett, Vice President and Head of Development for DH Property Holdings, 2 Park Ave, New York, 10016. And pleasure to be here with you this evening. I'm going to limit my comments really to the architecture and let the rest of the team talk about some of the other concerns. We worked very, very closely with CI Design and Casey and the HSH team to respond to what I thought was very pointed and valid feedback the last time about the look of the building and how to screen the truck court. We can get into the technical details of maneuvering into the docks, which is really one of the reasons that they need to stay where they are, but we'll stay on the building for now. So if you remember it before, it was kind of a very neutral, kind of blank building and didn't, as you said, fit with the surrounding context, which is primarily brick and more of a kind of contemporary, some aluminum accents, lighter colors mixed in with the brick in the adjacent properties. So that's what we've worked with our architect to do here. There's a few things that we should cover. One is the screen wall, which is approximately 24 feet in height from the building floor, and it also sticks out the full length of the trucks at the dock. In that wall, we've incorporated brick, which you'll also see interspersed throughout the entire facade to tie into the adjacent buildings. We have aluminum accent canopies and entry features along the street facade, and then a variation of both panel height on the parapet and depth. The walls actually step in and out and have color variation. And I think if you were to drive down and look at the buildings adjacent, it's actually very similar in character, color, and I think it's gone a long way to addressing your concerns. If you have any questions.
Any questions from the board?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Can I speak?
Sure, go ahead. Anita?
Yeah, so I appreciate the design of the building, the effort that was put into it. However, looking at that, it still really sticks out as a warehousey. Is there anything more that you could do to make it, again, this is a commercial office complex area. This is what we've been marketing it to, that would, at least from the front, look more like a office complex, and less as a large warehouse that's been prettied up, which I do appreciate, by the way. It is a lot better than before.
Sure. So I think the answer to your question is yes. We could look at whether it's true physical day one glazing at the corner and a couple areas along the street frontage, or providing for a panel that can be knocked out when a tenant comes along and knows exactly where they will sit their office in the building. But I think we'd be willing to look at that.
Okay.
And it's essentially have more of a glazing line along the street.
Gotcha. Okay. In?
Is it needed
That would be
down?
great, thank you.
Okay.
Just to that point, and I see Badra has joined us from Sustainability Committee. Are you intending to build the building so that it can be repurposed for a higher and better use?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a new concept, at least for, that I'm aware of. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think throughout our portfolio, we have a wide variety of tenants in these types of buildings. You know, some are, as you know, warehouse, others are more service-based, you know, companies that do other things beside warehousing. And, you know, we're really here to see what the market drives. We'd be happy with a tenant that finds the building useful. It doesn't necessarily just have to be warehouse, but since that's a permitted use, we'd like to have the market tell us. So.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Nancy had a question.
One more
Yeah.
question? Can
Sure.
I ask one more question?
Anita's not done.
Okay.
From the abutter, to the left, I guess, or to the right, what would be the view? You said from the front we wouldn't be able to see the tractor trailers, and I think you said that it was screened also from any of the abutters seeing that. I just want to confirm
Yes.
my understanding.
The berming and arborvitae go up around the corner, back, and then the abutter also has their own landscaping kind of from that point back as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Nancy?
thank you. I have a request for engineering, and that is, that you need to go away to do. That is on the landscaping plan.
Sure.
Would you please update the plant schedule table to include the mature diameter and height?
Sure, diameter. Okay.
It would make it tremendously easier to review.
Sure.
Okay? Thank you. And I have a question for Evan, and that is, on this street, do we have the ability to restrict outgoing truck traffic to a left turn only?
We do. It's a town-owned road.
Okay. So it keeps it out of the center, effectively. You can't do anything about incoming, but you can do something about outgoing.
Correct. So you can sign it, you can condition it. The next step would be to figure out, if there's a desire, how to have self-enforcement
Yeah, I understand the enforcement challenges.
or self-policing.
Yeah, but,
And, you know, maybe the applicant, if they operate similar facilities, maybe has some thoughts, ideas, or existing programs as to how they may do that.
okay.
Okay.
I would truly like to see that truck entrance, I guess, slanted such that it heads toward the highway. But,
As designed, they're designed for both entrance and exit.
yeah, I understand. So,
And as you
All right.
recall, at the first meeting, the main entrance is designed to use the existing signalized intersection.
yeah.
Yep.
Yep,
Gotcha.
okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Well, thank you. That was an excellent question to segue into the next part of our presentation, which is a discussion of traffic and the traffic report and peer review. As I understand it, we submitted an original traffic report. That report was reviewed by your peer reviewers and submitted back to us with a number of comments, questions, and typical peer review suggestions.
Excuse me, does it make sense to hear from the board's peer review consultant first, and then you can
Well,
present your...
I'm done, one more minute. I was just setting the stage.
Setting good, yeah. Thank you.
So, in essence, there have been two back and forths between our traffic consultant as well as the town's peer review. So there's been two separate reviews, and I do believe we've received a final report. So with that, I would ask whether or not you want to let Mr. Dirk speak or representative from your peer reviewer. But I do want to let you know that Kerry Pike is here, our traffic consultant, to answer any questions you might have or to discuss any issues with your reviewer. Thank you.
So I believe Sean Kelly is here on behalf of Vanessa Associates.
That's correct. Good evening, members of the board. Again, Sean Kelly with Vanessa Associates. Thanks for having us tonight. So yeah, that is correct. They have responded to our last outstanding comments, and quite frankly, the comments that we've raised have been addressed. In a nutshell, we had asked them to expand the study area to include the intersection of Route 129 with Omni Way. It's a signalized location that was between two of the other intersections, Mill Road and Elliott Street, that were studied. We thought it was prudent to include the entire corridor, and they did. They utilized counts from a prior study, and ultimately what their analysis showed is that there's no traffic impact there, there's no safety conditions there that we have any concerns with, and the impact of the project is de minimis. The second comment we had really dealt with more of a post-development condition. We do these projections based on ITE data, and certainly they've taken a very conservative approach with how they did the trip generation. It'll likely be less than what they're projecting, but they have been conservative. We simply ask that once the project's up and running, they go out and do some traffic counts just to confirm what was projected is what's out there, in reality. And if there is a need to do some minor tweaking to the signal timing, which we don't suspect there will be, given how the signal's projected to operate, that they agree to undertake that effort to work with the town to to tweak the timing to make it work, to really optimize the operations. But other than that, the initial study was done, in accordance with all required standards. It was professionally done. We had really very minor comments, and at this point, everything we have has been addressed satisfactorily.
Thank you. So,
Any questions from the board on traffic?
yeah.
What was the number of trips? I'm sorry, Anita. What was the number of truck trips that they're expecting every day?
They had projected a total of 48 truck trips a day, 24 in, 24 out. And again, that's over a full 24 hours of the day. So typically these types of facilities, they have, very, very low generation. Once you get past, the evening peak hours into the evening, and even in the early morning, they're low. Most of the truck traffic typically occurs late morning to early afternoon is the distribution. So it's 24 again across the course of a full day. And then during peak hours, it's about 4 in the morning, 4 in, 4 out, and then in the evening 2 in, 2 out. So again, most of it doesn't occur within those peak hours.
Okay. Any,
Anita had a question.
Anita?
Yeah, I like to see the traffic study on the impact on Stedman Street, because, like I said, I brought this up at a previous meeting, as a WPI, non-traffic hours, and I, put in the address to go back, and it told me to get off at 110 and take a right onto Stedman Street to get there because of the traffic, and it wasn't even a heavy day. Then I was in that property, during normal traffic hours, and it told me to take a right to get to go toward Westford. And then yesterday, there was an accident on 495 where it was backed up to Route 3. That actually told me to take and go through the center of town to bypass all of that traffic and get on down in Westford to bypass quickest way to get onto the traffic. So I'd like to see a traffic study that shows the impact of the center of town into Stedman Street.
Golden Cove.
Golden Cove, yeah.
Golden Cove.
Golden Cove, that Stedman Street intersection to 110, and then what happens when, and as we know, happens a lot, when there's a major backup and everybody's trying to cut through the center of town.
Got that?
Are you making a request, or do you want to
Yeah,
hear
I
from, or do you
think
want to
this
hear
is-
from Sean as far as methodology and?
Well, why don't we get his comments on those questions, among other things?
Yeah, I
See
mean,
what he- yeah.
Sean, are you able to reply to that?
Right. I mean, I certainly understand the concern. I mean, frankly, we expect, we concur with the distribution that, the truck traffic's really going to be oriented, to and from Route 3. We don't see a lot of it being, locally oriented. As far as the commuter traffic, I mean, these are, if you live in town, if you live in Chelmsford, and that's the most convenient route, certainly you may go through the center. A lot of these people are still going to be traveling on the highway to get to work. But, I mean, we reviewed the distribution. We felt it was appropriate based on the pattern. Certainly, during certain days, if there are backups, you follow a routing. But these are typically going to be commuters that take the same route in and out every day. There may be days that they don't.
I'm concerned about the trucks are going to try to take the shortest route, because we all use Waze, right? And then we're going to see stuff on the Stedman Street, Golden Cove Road intersection. It's bad enough as is.
I mean, the only way you
traffic.
can really do that is to have a restriction on how the trucks leave the site. If you force the trucks, to make, an exiting left turn maneuver towards the highway, that's really probably the only way you could address that concern.
I'm worried about more concern if they're on 495 and are trying to, because the traffic and the amount of time it takes to do from 110 to go down and get onto Route 3 to get off at 129, when there are accidents, and there are accidents all the friggin' time, it's just faster to get off of 110 and then take a right onto Golden Cove to get there. And how do we prevent that traffic? Because that's going through neighborhoods. That's my concern. We're already having issues with UPS on the other side. So I don't want to open the door for additional issues here.
No, understood. And again, I think it's important, this isn't a very busy generator in terms of trucks. It's 24 over the course of a 24-hour day. So, in terms of the overall truck traffic that you would see along the corridor, if you see two more trucks an hour, it's not, I understand the concern absolutely, but I think the reality is that when you look at the total volume of traffic on the corridors that you're talking about and the potential shifting during peak hours, I mean, this project certainly isn't going to solve back up on 495. If that happens, it happens. But I do think that even if there was some shifting in terms of the actual increase in truck traffic along those routes compared to what's out there today, it's not a real significant increase.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just don't want additional truck traffic going on Golden Cove. We already have enough truck traffic. We had, you already had someone come up regarding another project talking about all the increase in truck traffic on his road, which is Stedman. That is there needs to be a way that we can not allow trucks on, if it was closer to the highway or something that would guarantee that trucks come in and out, that's the only way they can get there, but we can't do that. We see it with UPS. They lease their employees, and they have no control over how the trucks are coming in and out and where they're going.
If I may.
Yeah, please do.
Carrie Pike with Howard Stein Hudson, the traffic consultant. In addition to what Mr. Kelly had just said, I think that there are some things that we can do, and one of those is directing our regular trucks. I understand what you're saying about if there's traffic, if there's an accident, they try to find another way around. I don't necessarily agree that happens all that frequently, but it does happen. But we can give them the direction of this is your best route. Because we're going to have those regular delivery people that are coming and going, the trucks are going to be the regular people. It's also probably less traffic than the current use that's allowed there now in terms of the numbers of trips. So I think those two things, and I know one of the other board members had brought up the idea of at least potentially controlling the exiting traffic.
Yeah.
So I think that might be something we'd be willing to entertain particularly for the large trucks.
I think that's the concern.
Go into the center of town.
That's not a complete, but that's half of it. I mean, that's half the trips. You figure half of them come in, half of them go out.
Right.
That is some degree of control. Okay. Do give that some consideration if you would. And then we'll probably have to discuss that a little bit more.
We've heard that Golden Cove Road, that's not a state road,
You
right?
can't limit the trucks, they've already tried.
You can't limit the trucks on that section?
No.
That cut through?
Okay.
No.
I'd like to understand the reasoning for that, but I'm sure Paul could.
I can give you an answer for that.
Yeah.
If you want to do a truck exclusion, even if it's your own road, you have to go through Mass DOT, and you have to show that there is an alternate route.
The select
there
board.
is an alternate
The
route,
select
but
board
it's
is
through the
actively
center.
studying this.
And they're not getting anywhere?
And the story with Golden Cove is that a number of years ago, that the town put up truck exclusion route signs, and several days later, Mass DOT informed the town that that was not state-approved, and the state would not approve it. The message is that the select board, working with the Traffic Advisory Committee, Police Department, DPW, Town Manager's Office, are actively looking at all kinds of solutions for truck traffic. It's a challenge because many of the roads that go through Chelmsford are numbered routes, and by definition, MassDOT generally won't restrict trucks on numbered routes, whether they're town-owned or state-owned. So it's a challenge. But I think, just to try to provide more data, because I think this is a sensitive topic, and I brought up the AM, PM, to Anita's point. I think it's critical to understand that while this project will generate additional truck traffic on sensitive roads, as your peer review consultant said, it's not a magnitude that's going to really change anything. So while some members don't want any increase in truck traffic, you need to then review the criteria in your bylaw and figure out how to apply the data to either support or not to support, justify a decision related to traffic.
So I have a
Related to
question.
truck traffic in
Sorry.
particular.
I have a question about that, which is, this is, the traffic report was generated making assumptions as to the number of incoming and outcoming, 24 in and 24 out, and that's without a tenant having been identified. So should there be a tenant that's having significant increase over that estimate, what is the recourse?
So I think that is the purpose of what Mr. Kelly and Mr. Dirk asked as a condition, that we would study post-occupancy. We would do the counts and compare them to what's in this report. And then if there need to be adjustments made, whether that's to the traffic signal or if the traffic is significantly higher, it may be that we have to come back to this board. I don't know exactly how that works. Doug probably has a better idea than I do. But, I mean, that's the purpose for the monitoring, is so that you can check after.
So
We
it's-
did actually
But
use
that's too late.
we did actually use a higher conservative land use. So of the, warehouse uses, we picked the one that has the highest number of trips generated, so that hopefully we're covering the worst case scenario, and that whatever tenant comes in would be less trips than
What
what we
Mr. Dirk
estimated.
said at a different hearing for a different project, but the same question, was it, again, this is the applicant's proposal. And this is their traffic study based upon their assumptions, it's been peer reviewed. But what Mr. Dirk said was that your decision references their traffic study, and they're voluntarily capping it at that number. That's a condition. And then we can figure out how to monitor that. But it can be enforced. Let's assume
I
there
just
was.
don't understand
let's
what the
assume there was no-
recourse is. If they're doing 60.
It's a violation, and it can be shut
So
down.
then they pay us a fine, or
no,
they
no,
have to
no.
move their tenant out, or what?
Well, if we could figure out a way where they self-monitor and provide the reports, otherwise the town can put a traffic count, a truck count, right on the curb cut.
Okay, but if they exceed it, then what?
That's just where you work with council, as well as their council. You craft conditions where they understand that the permit is conditioned. If you exceed, it's in violation, and the permit can be pulled, null and void. Other towns have done it. Our neighbor in Westford has done that, and it's a legally binding condition. That's how this is played, where the applicant is proposing something, they're looking for an approval, this is their traffic study, so they're clearly willing to say, we can live with no more than 48 trucks per day. And if that's the sensitivity spot, and that's how the board wants to condition it, then that's how this plays out. But yeah, we need to figure out a way to either proactively monitor it, or the town goes out there and monitors it.
Who pays for the town going
Well,
out there?
the police department has traffic counters, Mimicog has
But there's a
traffic
cost
counters.
to that.
Oh, we can have the applicant put money towards it. Again, so there's all kinds of legal mechanisms.
So we can say that, wait a minute. So we can say that, then we put a condition that like says that instead of 48, we feel more comfortable at 24 trucks a day.
No,
Like
I
we
think,
approve this, then we,
I think you would have that conversation with the applicant, then the applicant would inform you whether that was acceptable or not. That's normally how that would play out. If you place a condition that essentially denies what the applicant is looking for, even though it's an approval, that's not really gonna work for anybody. My suggestion is you
yeah,
try to
I
have
would
that.
be happy if we could do something about Golden Cove and not allow trucks on that road. And then put that, one-way exit that, like, you can only go left out of it onto Route 3, then I would be a happy person. And then, making this building look more like an office building, so it fits the neighborhood. That would make me comfortable. I
think that gives the applicant enough to go back and come back with more information. Are there ways to self-monitor the left turn only? Are there other ways to work with contractor trucks and advise them that they shouldn't be on Golden Cove and the preferred route in and out is from Route 3? I think that's what the board is looking for. And unfortunately, as you're hearing, the major truckers in town kind of predate any town opportunity to explore these options.
Evan, is there a way to do traffic calming on Golden Cove that would make it undesirable for trucks to take that road?
Probably, but I'd have to look into that. I don't know what the rules are
Yes.
for main roadways.
If we can't ban them, can we
There's probably techniques,
create a
but
situation that they
yeah.
decide on their own not to go there?
likely I just don't have experience with that.
Yeah.
I'd ask, that maybe the applicant look at that. We could ask our peer review consultant to look at that at a high level, and we could ask, the Traffic Advisory Committee to also to look into that.
I think it would be advantageous to at least investigate that, because Golden Cove is kind of being the thorn in our side in terms of ongoing development on 129. And I don't see it getting any better until we solve that traffic problem. We're continuously going to have an issue here as new development projects come in until we solve the traffic issue on Golden Cove.
What would happen if all those office buildings went back to office buildings and 100% occupancy?
Then you're
What do you
going to
think the
have a lot
traffic
of.
would do?
Then you're going to have a lot of cars on Golden Cove.
You'd have a lot of cars
Instead of
all over
trucks.
the
All over the
town.
place. All over the town.
So
We've
how-
had them
how-
before,
How do you,
you know?
some of them are hundreds of cars.
Yeah,
So how do you deal with that?
yeah,
So we got to look at that.
yeah. I mean, we had them when that office park was full, that's what we had.
And
The
you don't
center
have-
of
and you-
town blocked up way past Route 4.
You don't have restrictions on left turn and right turns out of the
Yeah,
office park.
until 9:30, yeah.
You don't have restrictions,
Yeah, that's right.
right?
I got stuck in it
Yeah,
periodically.
but
Oh, yeah.
you're not getting woken up in the middle of the night with a truck, an 18-wheeler going by either.
No,
Like,
I
there's
agree
a
with that.
difference between a car
Yeah,
and a truck.
I'm not
That's the
talking
real
about
issue.
midnight. We haven't gotten to those discussions of timing and hours. I'm just talking about, you're talking about, we can't stop the truck traffic in town. There's truck issues all over town.
Yeah.
I'm up in North Chelmsford. It's
Yep, you
all
got
up
'em there.
there.
It's all over town.
We got gravel pits up there that are coming through neighborhoods. It's everywhere in town.
We have an
So
asphalt plant in the center.
How do you,
Sit in the
but
center.
48 trucks versus 600 cars?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the cars would do a lot more, but, I mean, it's a 6 of one, half
They
dozen the other.
actually
How do you
aren't.
discuss it?
The
How
truck,
do you
the truck
review
noise
this?
is really the problem. I mean, you can have a continuous
Well, we haven't talked about truck noise.
automobile traffic
Well,
flow.
we're talking about truck traffic.
I
We didn't
understand.
talk about noise yet.
Yeah, but
So-
the point with the truck traffic, I mean, you have two issues with the truck traffic. One is is it safe? In terms of, can they stop? Is the roads wide enough? Can the kids get to school, et cetera? And then you've got the issue of the noise that those big trucks make. And, I live on 110. I can tell you that, the morning traffic, it's continuous. But the cars aren't the issue. They're just a low hum. It's when those big trucks come through as part of that traffic that it just thumps everything. It's really disruptive.
We're drifting a little bit away from the consideration of the particular case,
Well,
though I recognize.
But we're talking about the issue behind the case that we're looking at here, which is people's concern about additional truck traffic in town. And a warehouse can be expected to add truck traffic. So
Yeah.
I think we're talking about what the issue is that is at issue with this project.
A couple thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
We may be done with traffic for tonight.
Yeah.
No.
We may not be.
Doug's shaking his head.
But at your next work session on the 28th, town council will be there. It may be worthwhile asking about whether a board, to what extent a board can use noise generated from trucks on the roadway as consideration for permitting.
Yeah.
I don't know the details of that.
Yeah, I think there's some fine points in there.
And then, before I forget, before we move on from this topic, Phil Paradis from Beta, for your civil peer
Yeah.
review consultant, is also with us this evening.
Okay. And what was his?
That was for he did a peer review of the stormwater.
Of the stormwater, okay.
Right.
Well, why don't we at least get him on and find out how that looks? I
Yeah.
suspect that's not a
Yeah,
big
we got some
issue,
time
but
here.
we should, yeah,
Can
go
I
ahead.
just make one more statement
Sure.
relative
Oh,
to
please do.
traffic?
Yeah.
I do want to remind the board that we're seeking a special permit here, and the standard of review is whether or not what we're proposing to do will have significant detrimental impact on the neighborhood. So you are certainly well within your rights to consider traffic impacts, noise impacts, visual impacts, and whatever impacts you perceive this property might have. But I do need to remind you, with respect to traffic, it's our job to show you that our proposed level of traffic, which has been presented in a most conservative manner, which has been recognized and agreed to by your own consultant, that we're going to provide 48 trucks a day over a 24-hour period, and that it will have no significant impact on your travelway or your roadway or your safety. We may not like that we're going to add traffic, but we're not doing something that is going to be overly detrimental to our neighbors. What we're hearing from is neighbors who live on Golden Cove, or potentially, they're really not within the scope of our neighborhood, so to speak.
Of course they are.
Well, I think...
That's where you're wrong. You're definitely wrong in
But
this.
are you saying that our addition, and we're only proposing 24 trips in, 24 out. I don't know what the distribution was that will go down Golden Cove, but I got to suspect it's de minimis, 1, 2, 3, if any. And so how can you say that you point to our project and say adding 1 to 3 cars on Golden Cove is going to be significantly detrimental? I do know you have a problem, but you're trying to say that our project somehow trips the scale, and that we either therefore not build our project, or we come up to a solution to the town's problem in Golden Road. You've asked companies to come in here and consider redeveloping these properties, and I know some of you would like to see them all, R&D or office. Those uses will generate significantly more traffic than we will, and some of them will probably generate more truck traffic than we will. You get an R&D facility that has manufacturing, between parts coming in and parts going out, you're going to see a ton of trucks. But are you going to say, well, it's an R&D office building, which is what we want, so then that truck traffic is immaterial. I think you're looking at our project and trying to put, say that we need to solve those problems. My clients have already said they're willing to look at making the building look more like an office building. They're willing to say they'll restrict the right-hand turn or the left-hand turn that everyone's so concerned about. But to say that our traffic study isn't comprehensive enough and that we should be studying the center and Golden Cove and North Chelmsford and everywhere else, when your own consultants have said that's beyond the scope of what they should be doing. I just can't agree to that because it's not going to show anything. So I would ask the board to consider the review of the traffic, our peer review that was done by your consultant, the results of that, his conclusion that we're not going to have a detrimental impact on the neighborhood, on traffic, or anything else relating to traffic, and that we are willing to restrict those turns. So that should address, from what I hear, your biggest concern. But anyways, we will continue the traffic discussion as you like. And I guess we'll turn things over now to the peer reviewers for the engineering, and our engineers are here as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello again. I'd like to briefly go over the civil changes that has happened since the last meeting. And then we can, if you'd like, turn it over to Phil, but I'd just like to kind of paint the picture of the updated plan set. Evan, if you go back to that original rendering, the first page of that packet that I sent you. So we discussed it a little bit at the last meeting. When we went into the last meeting, we had land bank parking. I told you in this meeting we'd be coming forth with the parking proposed to be built. That is this northeastern corner of the property. As discussed, it was already part of our drainage design, so really the submission kind of just painted it as a to be proposed or to be built item. And then we laid out the catch basins and the drainage structures that would be utilized to manage that stormwater. We also added a drive-in bay, so it's no longer 16 actual loading docks, it's 15 loading docks with one drive-in bay. That drive-in bay is going to be the one bay right next to the screening wall, and that is just to allow maybe deliveries or other smaller vehicles to have access directly into the building rather than a loading dock. Besides that, landscaping was the majority of our changes. We went through, we added that landscaping berm, so we added a grading element just to raise that corner so that it kind of screens the view shed of the loading bays. And that wraps up the majority of the site civil changes. Actually, I will add that in adding the architectural elements of the screening wall and the visual elements of the building, it added some square feet to the building. It goes up to 81,799 from 81,450. Just very minor, but that did trigger an extra parking space requirement. So we have added a parking space up in this area of what was to be land banked.
Okay.
So with that, I will say that I believe Beta reviewed our original submission, which was from May 25th. They did not get the updated submission. I have had a chance to review their letter. We are happy to respond and comply with all their requirements. A lot of it was conservation items that they would like to see as part of their conservation submissions of erosion mitigation and stuff like that. A lot of the stuff that we would kind of do as a pre-construction item, but if he wants it front-loaded as part of our conservation permits, we can certainly do that. And we are going to look into the rest of his comments as well, and we'll respond to make sure that we handle all of them.
Very good.
So as I mentioned, Phil from Beta, your peer review consultant is on.
Yes, good evening, board members. We've been tasked with the responsibility to review the stormwater management aspects of this project and general civil engineering. So as the engineer indicated, we reviewed the project as submitted. We did review it for worst case scenario, so that would have been including the construction of the bank parking. So that's not going to change our letter at all. There are a number of items that are required because from the stormwater management regulations, and those are, majority of them are administrative and will not likely change the project significantly. There are three kind of unique things that we would recommend be included in the project. One is consideration of a guardrail along the north drive. There is a 7-foot 3-to-1 drop adjacent to the pavement. So I think the engineer should evaluate whether that's a safety issue or not. The second is that there is an existing drain line that provides the outlet for the adjacent property across the property through an easement, and outline and yes, through the back there. I don't know if you can go to the stormwater.
Bring it up.
Yeah. So it's labeled as a corrugated metal pipe of various sizes from 12 to, yeah, so it goes from the right side there, and you'll see it zigzags across the property. Oh, that's a different easement. The other one is right there, right starts right about there. Go to the left a little. Yeah, that's the easement right there. So we recommend that the applicant TV the line before they do all the construction in case there's a challenge or, you know, going to be a maintenance issue and they'll have to be dug up later. So, and then the third thing is related to the infiltration on site. Now, mind you, this is really a redevelopment project relative to the stormwater management standards. The applicant is reducing the amount of impervious surface on the site. They are providing some recharge in the various recharge systems there, right in that actually this is not the location, but we feel because the site is predominantly A soils that there's an opportunity to provide more recharge than what they consider as practicable to meet the kind of the design standards as if it were a new project relative to the recharge component of the site. So that's the short version. There are many comments. We can go back and forth offline and get those addressed.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. So I'd like to speak to the last two comments. As part of our updated submission, we've actually proposed to rebuild the line that goes from the abutters through the easement to the new basin, or where was the old basin to the wetland. So it's not going to be the corrugated metal anymore. We're going to rebuild it to HDPE, and it'll be a new line. So
okay. Is that private or public?
It's private. It just comes from the abutters. And the last comment with the recharge, we're happy to look at the amount of recharge that we can provide on site. We currently provide about double what the existing does as far as the percentage to the requirement. So we will look at what we would need to add just to meet the requirement fully.
Okay, thanks. Sound good? All right, that's some progress there as well. Actually, it's progress on several fronts here. Are we at, if I understand it, we've heard most of the stuff that the proponent wanted to present tonight. And I think we've covered our peer reviewers. What do we want, assuming that we continue, what do we want to discuss for the next meeting? I think we need some of the results on the traffic conversation for specific questions that were asked. Anything else?
I'll
Updated
circle with-
landscape plan.
Yeah.
And I'll circle with the Traffic Advisory Committee.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
So you'll do traffic advisory, you'll look at the acorn count.
I'll look at the acorn count. Exactly.
They're gonna work with the peer reviewer to
Okay.
update the civil.
Okay.
We still have a open public hearing as well.
For
Yeah,
the,
well-
and for comment for engineering.
Sure.
When you put together that updated landscape plan, would you also take a look at your various shrubs that are in use? And make sure that they don't go weedy and spread all over the place. Because I'm looking at one of them in particular, the sumac, and I could be wrong, but I think that sumac has a tendency to spread everywhere.
Sure, I'll coordinate with the landscape
Yeah,
architect. and,
just to,
we'll see
yeah,
what we
just
can do.
have them check through them and update the selections if need be.
Sure. Wonderful.
I have a question for engineering.
Yes.
Just a quick question. I thought, I might be confused with another project. Are we planning on putting solar on this roof? I just can't see it on the drawings. I didn't know if it was this one or another one.
Yeah, it's nice.
Oh,
Looks like a good
oh,
place
Michael
for it.
Looks like a good place.
Yeah, so we've designed the roof to accommodate it, and we've been looking into the actual application
Yeah.
and whether the infrastructure's there to support it, should we have to give power back to the grid. So we are considering doing it. So.
Great. All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, just so I can be clear,
Yep.
it's obvious what we need to do in terms of civil engineering. We'll let the consultants continue
Yep.
so that we work towards that clean letter,
Right.
that we've addressed all of their concerns. We're going to do the landscape upgrading. We're going to look at the architecture to see if we can make it look more like an office building. But I need some clarification on traffic.
Okay.
I know that one of your members has suggested that we expand our study area to include the Center and Golden Cove Road intersection. Neither our traffic consultant nor yours has suggested that that is necessary or even worth doing. And so we're not inclined to do that unless this board tells us we must.
Well, we can send it around the board. Personally, given the number of trucks that's being discussed, I don't necessarily see that as being useful territory, but let me find out what other people
The one
think.
question I have is there's been a change to the building where it's actually drive-in now.
Right.
Does that change the operation? Is it going to be more trucks, less trucks? How does that affect the operation?
It doesn't affect the
Taking one
the
bay away.
estimated traffic. What it probably takes away is the number of tractor trailers versus a
Smaller
box trailer
delivery
or a
trucks.
smaller trailer. But assuming we consider all of those trucks, it does not have an impact on our expected truck generation. Just the physical size of the truck.
I don't think we should expand it if they're if they agree to the left-hand turn.
Yeah, that's kind of my inclination as well. What do you think, Nancy?
I think that the additional traffic from this application compared to the traffic that already exists is such a tiny percentage that it's totally irrelevant anyway. And if we have the left turn only, that solves a big piece of it.
Yeah.
So no, I don't have a need to see an expanded traffic analysis.
Okay. Anita, you want to weigh in?
I mean, I still think we should, I'd like to see it, I'd like to see the numbers for at least the 110 Golden Cove Road impact.
That is considered one of the worst intersections.
Yeah,
According
that's the worst one
it's
in
like
the
a number
town,
7
actually.
intersection. or
Yeah,
whatever
it's nasty.
rated.
Evan, do you have the data on how many trucks go through that intersection a day?
It may have been
Do you
looked
have
at.
it handy?
It may have been looked at with the other project.
It did, yeah.
I don't believe this traffic study didn't.
No, they didn't cover it, but we may actually have that
Does our traffic engineer have
data.
that data handy?
If that study included that intersection, then it
I
absolutely
think
would.
it did.
It definitely.
Yeah, well,
I believe it
can you dig
did.
that up for us and shoot it around?
Yeah, I can, yeah, I'll send it back
Can you
out.
dig that up rapidly?
That's not for you, that's.
Yeah.
We have the data.
We may
Because I
have- we
think
may have
we
data.
have that data, and we can look at the proportionality.
Sure.
Oh,
Because
that'll help.
I just think that you're somewhere well under 1%
Yeah, we're in the noise.
change. It's noise.
Mike,
Say-
it's
say-
Tim Shanahan.
Yeah, Tim.
I'm a no on expansion of the traffic study if our engineer didn't ask for it.
Okay, well, I,
So I'm a no. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we've clearly all asserted and identified that there's an
Yeah.
issue at specific
Yeah.
interchanges that we already knew there was an issue. And, you know, I think it's incumbent upon us, the town, the select board, whomever, to try and solve these issues,
Yeah.
but not by
but not each
handing
proponent.
this.
Okay, so
That information.
then let me,
It's not
let
gonna
me
tell us
answer your
anything.
question. I guess the answer to the question is no, we're not asking for that expansion, but you understand what our concerns are, and if you come up with any other things that we haven't thought of,
Well,
I mean,
that's
the-
what we were talking about. We'll
yeah, I
look
figure,
at it, but
you know, you
Into a
go
full
as far
traffic
as you can go with these things, and I mean, if we can, the left turn may be the good answer.
Can I ask
Or
a
the
quick
best.
question?
Yes, go ahead.
It's just in the back of my head. If we, have you ever seen any left turns exiting only, and then any right turn coming in only? So coming down 129, if a truck was coming from the center of town, they could not turn into your property because of the left-hand
I
turn.
think those are
is a-
different situations.
So have you ever seen that, has anyone ever seen that covenant put on a restriction? That you have to tell your suppliers you have to come in from Route 3?
I've seen it.
That's a great idea.
I have seen it on a project that I worked on in Holliston. That was actually an auto car, like, auction place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
the Big
So they
auction.
had, car.
Traffics.
Tractor,
Yeah.
the trailers that bring cars coming and going, and then other smaller ones coming and going. And there were issues
Well,
with, it was an industrial area surrounded by a
Yeah.
residential neighborhood. So we had specific,
They had
restrictions
events.
put into the decision that, about the routing that those trucks could take to get to
Okay.
and from the site.
Well, why don't, if you could consider for us then, and this is with my traffic hat on, what the impact on your project would be of, I'm not assuming that we can necessarily do that restriction, but assuming that we could, would that cause great problems in consternation? And it might.
Sure, and again, I'm probably the least expert in traffic here,
Yeah.
but understand, if we take that entrance at the intersection, and you want us to make it a right turn only,
No.
left turn only, sorry.
Yeah.
Left turn out, right turn in.
Out,
Route 3.
you're gonna have a restricted turn.
Yeah.
So now someone coming the other way, how do they, they're not gonna be able to take a
Well,
left turn
We're
in.
trying
Are
to,
you only restricting trucks?
Trucks.
Yes.
traffic.
Okay.
Because cars could come in at the other end, the cars could come in at the other entrance.
Well, except that you don't have the.
It's a little convoluted,
Yeah.
but
But what's gonna happen, what's gonna happen, I suspect, is if you have that left turn only, so you've kind of created a physical barrier to the right turn in, what are the trucks that come from the center? And we can't necessarily dictate
No.
how our suppliers get to our site. They're gonna go by our site and have to turn around
So,
and come back up.
but they'll learn
Go
from their
wreck the road.
mistake.
but
They won't do it twice.
They won't do it twice.
Well, okay, let's stick with the left turn out consideration for now. I think that's the bigger piece of this.
We're gonna discuss it.
You
and-
discuss it.
and
If
see
you
what
come
we
up
can
with
do
good
to
ideas,
address
you let
your
us know.
Concerns, and we will, but
Okay.
understand at some point, we stop putting so many restrictions
Yeah.
on, we
Yeah.
create
Nobody
new
can get in and
problems.
out.
no, I agree, but
Consequences,
being in
right?
the construction industry, every day we have restrictions put on us to build a new building in various locations that we have to tell all of our suppliers, you have one way in and one way out. And they just had it down on Mill Road. They were coming into that development.
But that's,
One way in, one
that's
way out.
because you're creating a dramatic increase in traffic for a defined period of time during
Right.
construction.
No, I agree with that,
So
but
I can,
your
see, and you
suppliers
have a
should be
limited
notified.
number of suppliers. think about a year-round operation of a facility like this. They're, how do they get to all of their suppliers? And I just, again, we will look at it. We will
Okay,
come up with a
good. Well, we got-
proposal, and we will do what we can do.
Okay. That sounds good, and I think that's all that we can reasonably ask. Okay, so we're done with presentations. We have a public hearing, and now's the time to continue it. Come on up, Brian.
Brian Latina, Precinct 9, Town Meeting Rep, 15 Jesse Road. Do any of you live in that neighborhood? I do. Have any of you worked in warehouses? I have. Have any of you routed trucks? I have. I'm astounded. Very concerned about the traffic issue. If you put a left turn only there, if you have any contract drivers, anybody's worked with trucks ever, unless you have house trucks, which no company does anymore, you're going to have contract drivers that have never been here before. Their GPS is going to light up. You're going to turn them left. They're going to have an accident on Route 3 at 495. There's one there every morning, pretty much. I'll start keeping track for you. Every morning, there's an accident, and they cut through Golden Cove, cars mostly, Golden Cove, down 129 to jump on Route 3 South. Took 12 years to get the lines painted over the bridge. Just got that done. Took 2 years since they gouged the pavement to show the on-ramp, off-ramp with yellow and fog lines. Anybody know what a fog line is? Traffic person does. It's the white line. 2 years. It was black, nothing. Solutions from a traffic experienced person with real truck drivers. Most of them don't speak English anymore. You can tell them by way of GPS, through the mechanisms of GPS, that there isn't a road on Golden Cove. And if you turn them left to go Route 3, and there's traffic, and their GPS lights up, and those trucks, they all have them, it's going to route them to turn right onto Mill Road, and then right onto Turnpike Road.
Yeah, that won't be fun.
Up over the top of Turnpike from the water tower down. You can turn your car off and get up to 50 miles an hour coasting. You will kill someone. Someone's already been killed at the entrance of Anstey Road and Turnpike. That's how we got our stop sign there. So you don't even have to have your car running. A truck coming down that is viciously dangerous. And if you have even one or two of the trucks, I know most people don't think about 53-foot trucks with weight in the back after they've been loaded or unloaded. It's a time bomb. So if you do turn them left, you need to get them on Route 3 no matter what.
Right.
So you
yeah.
turn off the GPS, and there is a mechanism for that. I know folks don't understand how that works. Your asphalt plant in Westford, you have a limited number of trucks that can come out of the asphalt plant and turn to Westford. Most of you may not know that there's a intelligent camera at that intersection. It counts the trucks and weighs the trucks. And when they hit their number, the alert goes off and the guys don't send any more trucks that way. You can build that into the system.
It's interesting.
They can also put a camera and match their license plates to the trucks and fire the guy next time he comes in. Hopefully you have truckers that are coming in and out all the time, and you have regional trucks. If you have any cross-country trucks, you're SOL. That's a really tough angle to get into and then back into if anybody parks in these lots. Up at the front end of that, good luck. I've seen many trucks hit stuff, especially the newer truck drivers, which there are lots of them. So we need to keep them off Turnpike as a route difference. You need to have a truck route sign, but the reality is they're going to listen to the GPS in many of the languages that it now speaks, and you need to get them on Route 3 even if there's an accident there. And you need to get them off Route 3 rather than coming on Golden Cove through traffic.
Okay.
And then back to my, I'll loop for a second back to my other comment about, I was going to ask if the traffic people had done any testing showing accidents on Route 3 or 495. We had several in the last 2 weeks. I'm assuming you guys would know to check for that. No? Okay.
We didn't specifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had a dump truck tip over recently, and we had people killed by a deer. The fire department can probably give you some statistics to tell you where the accidents are, but it's a red zone, Route 3, 495. It's a bad intersection. Route 129 is a bugle intersection designed specifically not to have traffic coming in and out easily. And the truckers will be really messed up coming in and out of that intersection. So some of them will make Golden Cove, no matter what you do. Financial, you heard me earlier, I was specifically talking about the financial implications of a warehouse versus office buildings versus 6-story buildings. I think if I read the zoning 195 zoning applicability, the submittals, there's a whole section in there that has to be in the application for you to consider a special permit. That needs to be filled out. The application that I saw from May 24th today doesn't have much information in it with regards to the financial impact to that piece of property. I know we're talking about kind of first big project in here and a warehouse at that. What's the implication to the town? Does it benefit us with regard to the overlay district that was promised to us by town meeting, during town meeting? I realized the last meeting, one of the comments made by one of the board members was that we failed in marketing this property, this entire area, to any offices, and now we're at the warehouse level. And they have a right to build a warehouse in there, but it's only a right to build a 20,000 square foot warehouse. So you will be responsible for allowing them to build something larger. And personally, I've dealt with 200,000 square foot buildings, and I've dealt with ones you can see from outer space in Scranton.
I know the place.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Yeah. I mean, everything from the trucks coming in to the worst traffic you've ever seen. The problem with that, my experience was residential driving through these areas. It's a huge problem. So
Anyway.
I would appreciate you thinking about what our overlay district was designed for. And once you put a warehouse in, you might as well put them all the way down the street.
Well, I do want to make one point here. If I understand correctly, this did not come to us through the overlay district. This is not am I correct?
The first time?
Yeah.
The first time it did not?
No. It's this time is, so the overlay district, I don't believe is germane to us. I understand what the overlay district is and why we put it in, but seeing as this request is not being made through CEIOD.
There was no application originally.
No, we had no
There was
hearing.
discussion.
We had a preliminary discussion, which was very helpful, but it was not a COID hearing, and nobody has asked for any grants of rights, uses, capabilities, or anything else that would be given under COID.
Okay, and
This is strictly bottom level zoning.
from a legal point of view, your opinion as a legal scholar here on the overlay district is that the overlay district can be made completely irrelevant to the underlying district, and somebody could by right build in the overlay district.
If the proponent does not request any relief or anything that the overlay district offers, then it's off the table and irrelevant. It's as if the overlay didn't exist at all. It's an option of the proponent to request capabilities granted, the leeway, whatever it might be, if they wish it, and these proponents have not.
Okay, 6-story building by right with the overlay district is a different issue.
Yeah, that's a different issue.
So they could put a 20,000 square foot building in there, but again, if you're doing a special permit, then this board could make it a 40,000 or 50,000 square foot
Well, yeah, now
building.
we still have
It's
this,
on
we
that.
still have the special permit here for a major business complex. And that is germane, and that does allow us to consider a lot of things. But that's the heading under which we're considering the traffic and considering the,
And you can't consider the fact that particular property could be a 6-story building, office, or industrial biological.
well, I mean,
or
when we
whatever.
look at alternatives, we may.
But you might
look
do
at-
that as opposed to putting in a 40,000 square foot warehouse with truck traffic.
Well, I'm not sure I completely understand your question.
It's not in front of us right now.
But
It's not
only
in
if
front
we
of us.
had an investor
Hypotheticals.
that, in the wings that was looking to do that, and we don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Council answered this question?
Yeah,
And I think at your work session on the 28th.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
It's probably good to revisit that.
yeah,
But the fiscal considerations is based upon what is being proposed.
Right.
Not what could be.
That's
right, exactly. It's
in
not,
lieu
it's
of-
it's not a, it's not a comparison to things that haven't been put on the table.
Exactly.
Okay. Again, my understanding as a
Yeah.
town meeting rep was it was to cover this area with a different umbrella, and everything under it, the example, IA district can't
Yeah.
have residential, we built residential in there because of the overlay, but we basically violated the underlay, if you will.
Brian,
Yeah, well,
I
it's-
think,
it's-
I think it would be more appropriate to say that the COID and BAOD provide alternate umbrellas. So the underlying zoning stays in place,
Always
doesn't
there.
change, but now there's options that can be used. And those options are at the prerogative of the applicant. The planning board has to approve the use of those options as being applicable, that they meet the rules for using those options. But we cannot mandate that they use those options.
Except through the special permit process.
No.
Yeah, the special
No,
permit
not at all.
process is separate.
We cannot mandate that they use the overlay criteria.
From an economic point of view, by
And
that.
from any point of
From
view.
any point of view. We can.
Always have access to the underlying zoning.
They always have access to the underlying zoning and only the underlying zoning. But within the constraints of the underlying zoning, anything over 20,000 square feet is a special permit that still requires all those criteria to be met.
And those should be in the application.
Whether they're in the application or not,
Well,
it
one of them
depends
that's,
on whether
we'll
there's
ask.
something, who cares about it and who believes that there's significance there under each one of those topics to be looking for that data.
Only you as a board.
Yeah,
That's
pretty
the ones
much.
that care. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Chris LaValle, 10 Edgewood Road, Precinct 10, Town Meeting Rep. I have a few questions and a few comments, mostly related to traffic.
Surprise, surprise.
Sure you do.
Yeah, surprise. So I was looking over the plans, and one question I have that maybe the traffic consultants could answer is related to the traffic flow at that signaled intersection near Alpha Road. If the truck traffic is in and out at that intersection, I was also looking at the fire department turning proposal, and it looks like those trucks need a wide turn to take a right. If you're coming from Route 3, you need to take a wide right turn to
Right.
make it in there. What happens to traffic at that intersection if Billerica Road 129 has a green light? There's a truck waiting to exit the property at that intersection. Is that truck going to be able to make a right turn if that truck coming out has a red light?
Giving the lane constraints, I don't know.
And if that is not possible, then 129 traffic's going to start backing up.
Yeah, that is a good point. And it depends on the width of that entry.
And
And
looking at the
turning
fire
radiuses,
department
yeah.
turning radius, they go into that other lane in order to make that turn.
That very well could be.
We have a traffic expert right here. She-
Yeah, actually, Case is the one that ran the auto turns.
We have run an auto turn template where they can make it, so we can provide that as part of the application.
Yeah, if you could, I would appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you. The second question was actually asked by Mr. McDougall and answered by the applicant's counsel, but I would like to hear from the traffic consultants as to whether or not that additional drive-in bay is going to increase traffic. Because adding that bay after the traffic study's been done, it seems like you would be able to add a whole fleet of delivery vans to the use of that. by just having the addition of that drive-in
I guess
bay.
I don't follow that. I mean, it's basically
It's a
replacing.
different traffic pattern, that's all I was bringing up.
Yeah, but Amazon has a number of drive-in bays for a lot of their facilities.
Yeah.
And if you have that drive-in bay, you now increase the number of local last-mile delivery vans. And so I'm wondering if that was taken into account in the traffic study.
Or if it's even significant, yeah.
Or if it,
And I would like to, it would be great to hear from both traffic folks, too.
All right, well, we can, let us take that one and consider it when we,
Well, let's hear from Sean. And
yeah.
yeah.
Carrie.
Sure. Well, I would say two things. First, with respect to the trip generation, I think it's important to understand that it's based on the square footage of the building, not the number of bays or the configuration of the bays. So they've already taken into account the building size, so it's been done appropriately. Second, and I think Carrie pointed this out earlier, there are a number of land use codes for warehouse uses that vary in terms of the intensity of the trip generation based on the type of activity that occurs there. And they've used the most conservative of the land use categories. Quite frankly, the category they use typically is reserved only for buildings that have over 200,000 square feet because the operations, when they're that intense from a traffic perspective, require a larger building. So even though they don't meet 200,000 square feet, they've used that rate. So certainly they've been conservative, and certainly they've done it based on the appropriate independent variable, which is the size of the building. So we're confident that the traffic generation they presented is accurate, and if not, likely conservative. Hope that answers the question.
Does, not really satisfactorily, in my opinion, because I think, and I've brought this up at other meetings, I'm likely going to bring it up again later on tonight, the land use codes were developed many years ago, and business models are changing. Places distribution centers are becoming smaller and more automated, and how buildings are being used is changing significantly. And
Right,
while,
I would only add that the warehouse category, I agree with you, is an old land use code that goes back decades. But actually, this edition of the manual is the first one that's really broken out the warehouse uses into various types. So I believe there's 5 or 6 different categories. So your point certainly, 5 years ago, 10 years ago is well taken, that, everything was a generic one land use code for warehouses. But the new manual actually has a number of different uses. And this is only I believe it's 2 years old now. So this is new data. It's not old data. I mean, quite frankly, again, they've used the most conservative rate that's there, and the rate they use is typically used only for much larger facilities than what they're proposing.
Mhm.
So, but you're right, 10 years ago, the land use code is it all lumped together, but the new data in the latest edition really does break it out to different categories, and they've used the most conservative one there is.
Thanks.
thank you. And then my last point that I just wanted to mention is that the counsel for the applicant was up here, and he actually admitted that there is a problem enforcing restrictions, especially with contractors.
that was-
No, actually, he said that it'd be very difficult to ask all of their subcontractors and suppliers to actually follow a lot of these restrictions. It's a point I brought up before. Restrictions are very hard to enforce and often don't work. And so I just wanted to bring that point up again and have you consider that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Okay, one more? Hello.
Joel Luna, 10 Carter Drive. First, I wanted to say that I definitely agree with the left turn only. That was a concern of ours, and so we would appreciate that very much. Would like to see if you could add the discussion of conditions to limit traffic and ways to enforce that in your next working meeting, because Evan was starting to talk about that, and that's obviously an issue that we're very concerned
Well,
about.
I think we have a lot of town boards all interested in it, and each one seems to have a piece.
Yeah,
But
yeah, so that would.
that's an ongoing discussion in town and is only going to get louder, I think.
Yeah, well, I would definitely appreciate it if you could add that to your agenda. I also appreciate the board's concern for Golden Cove traffic issues, because I live off of Golden Cove, and it definitely is a concern of ours. And in fact, I would add that neighbors are impacted if traffic proposed from the project comes through their neighborhood, which is the case if there was in fact traffic coming through. The only other thing I would add about the traffic, whether there's traffic coming through Golden Cove or not, is based on, ultimately it's based on the turn counts. That's what they use as their proportions then to lay on the miles per square footage to see how much traffic is going to be going back and forth. Those turns probably were made at a time in which there was not a warehouse use going on. So it may be that the proportion of turns is not right, but I'm not going to make an issue of that. I think in general, I think the applicant has taken, as your consultant said, has taken, if not the most, certainly one of the very top restrictive uses, so conservative uses. So I think that their traffic counts are pretty reasonable to use. Yeah. It would be a different matter if they were using a different code where it was much less, and you were concerned about whether they were actually capturing what potentially could come. And so in general, I agree with that. I just wanted to say, definitely agree with the left turn only. Appreciate your concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have any?
One online.
Huh?
One person online.
Okay.
May want to speak. I see Badre, your hand's up.
Good evening, planning board members. Thank you for taking the time for some input. First of all, I wanted to thank, I thought it was with Michael Bennett. I think he's the VP of DH Holdings for bringing up the topic of solar panels that when planning board did ask the question, and I would encourage and I would like to, if possible, as part of this application process, encourage DH Holding to meet with the CES, the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee, for some discussions on ways to, if this application were to be moved forward and approved, on ways to strengthen the sustainability aspect of this application itself. That being said, as the committee chair for CES, planning board will get to hear some aspects of what we are doing in CES to help more of that in terms of helping planning board make assessments in the future. In the coming weeks, you'll hear that. But that would be the end of my input as committee chair for clean energy and sustainability. A couple of points that I would like to make as a town meeting rep, precinct 11. Far off from the place where this particular development is happening. So I could argue that this is not in my neighborhood, nor do I care about it, therefore who cares what input I gave, or not, it concerns none of our residents in terms of traffic impact. However, the key thing that if I put the concept of systems thinking out on here, we've got to take a larger view of what this development means. A simple thing like traffic study, even though Golden Cove and the town center was not considered as part of a traffic study, there is issues to be, and it's been accepted, we have to do some particular activity in terms of how those the restrictions or guidances have to be considered. But I would encourage planning board not to write it off, number one. Number two, I would also ask planning board to consider what happens, especially in light of the previous town meeting rep, public input speaker here, who mentioned about the CEO ID that was passed a few years, and I think planning board or somebody else made a comment that the town has effectively failed to market the overlay zone as an office space and has not been either successful or not has marketed well, so to speak. However, we have to consider that if people are going to come in on the underlying zoning law, I would only comment that a warehouse begets a warehouse, not another office complex space and stuff. So I think planning board itself must then understand what happens if the entire CUOD converts into a long-term warehousing facility area, and what it does for traffic as one small byproduct. Forget about the revenue impact the previous speaker spoke about, but a warehouse begets another warehouse because the strategy gets replicated, and then even though it's only 48 trucks for this one, the next one also comes in and says, I've got 48 or 52, it's not going to change. The next one comes in, another 50 or 60. So consider those, you might want to think about that. And I know you are thinking about it to an extent, but I would encourage that you fully formulate what happens if the CUOD, if you've publicly admitted that we have failed, has a CUOD now collapsed and is no more useful. in that sense, and should it be removed and the underlying zoning to be enhanced so that we can do a better job of controlling what kind of growth patterns we want. I certainly echo, even though it was clear, but the sentiment that we walked in 10 years ago or 7 years ago in town meeting when the CEOID was approved was that this would help market and reach out to a higher category or a better category class commercial business revenue stream. So in that context, I would like to remind the perception issues with a lot of people. Again, a lot of the town may not care because it's in another part of the town. However, we have a duty to represent in what needs to happen.
Okay.
The one point that may help, maybe, and it's something that DH Holdings can consider it, is they may, if the application is successful and how they do it, hopefully they can bring as part of warehousing or some kind of activity under that shell. Maybe it's not a warehouse, but it may be another type of manufacturing or something else that they, in a future use case, depending on the life cycle of the building shell that they're trying to put together, is if they can go into some other sustainability-driven, oriented mindset businesses that align with Chelmsford's values and hopes and visions of it. So that would be my comment. Back with my CES hat a little bit. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anybody more online?
We have one more person.
Yeah, go ahead, Anita.
Frank Smart?
No, I think Mr. Smart.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, what I believe everybody's missing here is from the center of town, coming down 129, just before you get to the facility, the road width increases to 2 lanes in each direction. So why not have them turn left? If you turn right, you're going back into a single lane.
Yep, we're aware.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to be sure that no one's brought that up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more, anything more from the board? Otherwise, take a motion to continue.
September 14th?
Motion to continue.
September 14th, okay, we have the motion.
I'll second that.
Second? In
Oh, do we have
favor?
to close the public hearing first?
Oh, that's right, let's make that the motion to close the public hearing, to continue the public hearing.
Or continue the public hearing,
Yeah.
sorry. Motion to continue the public hearing.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and then, I guess that serves to continue you guys. All right, we'll see you.
See you then.
14th, was it 14th?
Yes.
Okay,
Good night, thank you. Thank you very much.
thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, and we come to the campus. There he is.
What's up?
Hi,
How are you?
you're good.
You have other team members outside?
Yes.
Now, bring him in.
Yep, and we have at least one party remote.
Who's the?
Bobby Show, MDL.
Okay.
Gotcha.
If this gets continued,
Huh?
it can't be on the 14th.
It can't be on the 14th?
No, we shouldn't have this many open
Yeah, we
hearings.
shouldn't have this many big
For them
projects.
coming on now at 9:20.
Okay,
Plus, you'll have River Neck on the 14th as well.
Yeah.
all right, so,
Yeah,
anyway.
So you
They should.
may need to think about scheduling a special meeting or
Yeah,
the 28th.
I shouldn't put them off too much.
right.
No, I agree, but I'm just saying, we just gotta manage the public
Yeah,
meetings.
but
Yeah,
this
it's
is
gonna
gonna
get
go till 11 tonight. Easily. It's just too long.
Okay, I think we ready?
Yep, go ahead.
Good evening, members of the board. Ooh, jeez Louise, sorry about that. For the record, Attorney Melissa Robbins from the law firm of Farrell and Robbins. We're here tonight for a continued public hearing for a site plan review for 255 Princeton Street, better known as UMass Lowell West Campus. I won't take up much of your time. The board may know that we got our responses to Beta last Friday. There's really no major issues with design or any of the standards. We're pretty much agreeing with anything of their suggestions. We have some updates to the plan to make and waiting for Beta's response, and we expect to have that in the next week or so. So really not a lot of
Can you
heavy.
just turn the mic towards you more?
It's echoing funny.
Okay, they'll adjust it.
Okay. We feel pretty good with the engineering, and hopefully we'll have something to you guys next week.
Okay. Sounds
We opened the conservation hearing yesterday. We actually had a very good meeting with conservation, talked about the form of the CR and some other minor issues, so that's moving right along.
I'm
We also
sorry,
had a-
Melissa, you talked about what?
Conservation, we talked about the conservation restriction and some other minor issues and continued out. We also had a great meeting with the Chelmsford Water, North Chelmsford Water, and the City of Lowell's Water Department. No major issues there, and we have some upgrades they may want to make, but we have no issues of concern whatsoever. So really some good meetings since the last meeting. Just wanted to give you a little update.
Good.
At the last meeting, in addition to the Beta issues, the board wanted to hear a couple responses to some abutter concerns and some board concerns. The first item was landscaping. You wanted a landscaping detail sheet. We did submit that. I don't know how much you've got to dig into that, because I know that, I'm looking right at Nan when I say that, but I know it was just submitted last Friday. I do have Sean Singer here, who will just give a quick overview to the board of the landscaping detail, and we can go through it. And the second issues were really traffic calming and pedestrian issues. Most of those issues were handled as part of the development agreement. But I do think just hitting the high notes, we do have Bob Michaud online just to hit the high points of the traffic mitigation and the pedestrian safety, just because I think it's important to touch upon them as part of site plan review, but they are already in place. So I won't talk anymore. I'll turn right over to Sean Singer so he can go through the landscape plan.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Sean Sanger. So, yeah, we're the landscape architects on the project. Thanks for having us in. So I can kind of be fairly brief, kind of walk you through that. So since we met before, we took in the peer review comments, and we've got Beta's comments, we folded those in. We really only had a couple of the landscape architecture-related ones where we got trees out of the stormwater basins, and then also actually, to your comment as well, Nan, we put together a planting plan with tree plants on there. So if you've got a chance, or when you get a chance to review that at your convenience.
You were good enough to give me a hard copy.
Yeah.
The one that was distributed is not readable on
Okay.
screen. It doesn't have the resolution to be able to.
The screen's really difficult. It's a very,
I can't even, expand it
on
and
the
say.
screen, it's really, the
it just
plans are
doesn't
definitely a
work.
lot
Yeah.
easier.
So I'll go through this.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Between now and the next meeting.
That'd be great. So we've got that on there with all of the trees as proposed, and the tree species. The majority of those are all native and really kind of indicative of the area here we're in. And then likewise, there was a request for photometrics on the site lighting, which is our second sheet. And once again, at least you can see red dots there. It's a little easier to read as far as the light locations, but once again, the resolution and the ability to read the numbers are really much easier to do on the plan. And the other thing that we did do on that, though, it's probably in the upper left-hand corner if you scroll down just a little bit. We did color code the numbers so that the black, there you go, in that upper, kind of right above it, that's all color coded. So once again, it's much easier to read. And we are all dark sky compliant. We have house shields on a majority of those lights that will be really sensitive to the residents in the units. Likewise, with the distribution of those lights, much of that light is very much forward focused, and most of those lights are all around the perimeter pointed in. So once again, we're getting minimal, if any, light coming off of the back of those. So you can definitely get into a lot more detail with all of the photometrics and the numbers associated with that within that plan.
What are you doing for speccing the color temperature?
We're at 3,000 K.
Oh, that's nice.
So we're trying to stay on the warmer side. We're not that super cold, kind of really white, super bright light. It's a much kind of softer tone. And the thing we like about that, and to be honest, as a landscape architect, it's much softer and it gives a better green to the plant material as opposed to the more mercury vapor, kind of crispy white blue
Crisp blue.
that turns everything kind of silver or really kind of bright.
Will any of those lights be solar powered?
No, they're not. Not for the the street lights. The issue with those is that technology's come a long way, but it's not there yet.
All right, okay.
So we're continuing to watch that, and we are looking at that on a few projects where we're focusing more on pedestrian lights as opposed to kind of the drive lights. But it's just not there to a consistent level where we could rely on that. And then there were some questions regarding seed mix for erosion control. We've put that as well in our response letter. So we've got that all listed out. There's probably 20, 25 plants, so I won't list those all off tonight, but that's all covered in our response. And comments regarding no irrigation from city water, we're aware of that, and that's totally fine. We're actually trying to make this as easy as possible to maintain, so really our goal is to get the plants established and to be able to shut that water off and just let them kind of perform on their own. We talked about the lighting, and I do apologize, Nan, on that, because when I saw the hard copy of what we gave you guys last time, that plant schedule was like it's 16. It was really, really little, so that's all bigger, so I apologize on that. But hopefully that's easier to acknowledge.
Yeah, this is fine.
And then we are still working on, because it was a lot to get together with the building plans and to have the, what I'll call more ground cover understory planting. We're still pulling that one together. But hopefully there's a good start with the tree canopy, and we can kind of go from there. Super. And I think I'll turn that over to traffic, which I think is.
Before you move on,
Yes.
are the landscaped areas going to be irrigated?
Yes.
All? Or
What
just
we're
portions?
showing right now for irrigation or intent, and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, would be the planted areas around the buildings. We'll have the amenity areas that are kind of in those courtyard spaces, and then likewise the lawn areas associated with that. But we are not proposing to kind of do all lawn. We would love to be able to get more of that meadow kind of wildflower mix associated with the edges of the wetland and be able to pull that up. So our thoughts are we're probably going to have a maintained zone along the sidewalk, particularly as you come up from Princeton up along that sidewalk that's in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 feet. So you're getting at least a maintained edge, and then to have that be a little more of the naturalistic, and we feel that'll be better visually, it'll be good for habitat, it'll also be good for pollinators, and so we think it's just kind of a natural visual extension of that wetland space there, so that will not be.
So, silly question on
It's okay.
that one.
Yeah.
If you're doing native mix or, meadow mix, and you don't plan to keep that regularly mowed, which is what I think I'm hearing from you, right? How are you going to keep invasives out of it?
That's obviously.
Because that's an issue.
That's an issue, and absolutely it's an issue.
Yeah.
And it's more so really within those first 2 years. So it's
not
work.
here.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
it's
a
work.
continuous issue.
I'm not going to say it's not easy, but it takes work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's ongoing maintenance associated with that.
The commission began discussing that last night.
Yeah.
And as you heard earlier, there'll be a CR,
Yeah,
and there'll be operations and maintenance provisions in there.
Okay.
yeah.
So I think, I think the commission, my suggestion is let the commission kind of take the lead on that. And then when
That's
they get a
their
little
baby.
further along,
That's their baby.
because they're also interested in knowing what the planning board is doing with your review and approval process.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, we have consistent invasion here, by, bittersweet, poison ivy, and wild roses. And that's just the reality, and you're going to have loose strife as well, and, they're all invasives, they're all going to give you problems and need to be worked into your maintenance plan.
This was actually, if I may, Mr. Chair, this was a raised concern during the development agreement process as well when we were speaking to this board and the Conservation Commission, so it's actually part of the development agreement as well, that as part of our work with the Conservation Commission, we have to have an invasive management plan.
Okay.
So that will
Okay.
be addressed, it has to be addressed
Has to
during
be
the
addressed.
conservation process,
That's
yes.
fine. It has to be addressed.
Gee, looks like a nice place to plant a couple of beehives.
That it does.
Yeah, I didn't mean to step away. Are there other questions related to the landscape?
No, not until I go through
Okay,
the
sure.
details of it.
Okay.
I see that Phil from Beta is still on. Were you guys planning on discussing your responses to the civil peer review tonight?
No, because we only got that to beta on Friday, so they haven't had time to respond to our comments yet.
Okay. And Phil, remind me, didn't you already present your initial review?
I believe we did, yes.
Okay. So I guess you can enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right.
See you, Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Traffic?
Yes, this is Bob Michaud with MDM. I'd be glad to provide an overview of some of our responses to comment. So good evening, Chair and board members. I think if someone could actually go to the slide set on traffic, what I'd like to do is focus on the principal comment that we received, which has very much to do with pedestrian safety and connectivity. That's been an important theme of this project from its inception, early planning stages. And what's shown here is literally the front door of the development along Princeton Street. This is the primary access where we know there is already a bus stop. This is at the Briette intersection. The concept here is to provide connectivity, pedestrian connectivity from the site to the existing area sidewalk system so that we can promote that mode of transportation in a safe and efficient way. And this conceptual plan indicates some of the primary elements of what we'll be submitting to Mass DOT for their review and approval on those improvements. And it shows this new crossing just to the left side of where Briette Street is located. And that crossing will entail reconstruction of both sides of the crossing, right? The sidewalks where new accessible ramps will be placed. The crossing will be controlled by what's called a rapid rectangular flashing beacon, an RRFB. These are very effective and visible dynamic signs that are pedestrian activated so that anyone crossing who activates this would be clearly visible to an oncoming vehicle. And what's new in this latest revision to the concept is the colored section on the page right, which is actually a sidewalk extension from the Lowell line all the way over to the driveway, right? That's the missing piece of sidewalk that several folks have commented on. The applicant has updated the concept to include the construction of that piece of sidewalk so that anyone who opts to walk from this development would have the option of using the sidewalk on the lower side of Princeton Street versus the upper side. All of this would be, again, subject to Mass DOT review and approval, but we've done quite a few projects just like this. They've all been very effective in making the pedestrian environment very safe. In addition to what's shown on here conceptually, we've heard loud and clear concerns from the neighborhood and the public in general, as well as departments about travel speeds and safety along Princeton Street generally. And so in addition to what's shown here conceptually, there will be speed radar feedback signs that are placed at appropriate locations on Princeton Street for both travel directions. And as the board is probably familiar with these are signs that illuminate your travel speed, and if you're traveling faster than you should be, they blink so that you're made aware. They've been proven to reduce travel speeds consistently by about 5 miles an hour or so, sometimes more, simply by making folks aware of how fast they're traveling. So those, again, would also be subject to Mass DOT review and approval, but we see no barriers or reasons that DOT wouldn't approve those types of measures. In fact, they encourage them. Beyond that, I'll reiterate that actually this next slide is a pretty good representation of what these RRFB crossings look like. You can see that these signs are placed on both sides of the road in both travel directions, and they have a flashing beacon on either sign assembly. that is very visible from a long distance when activated. And that includes conditions as shown in this figure that you might have fog or impaired visibility conditions. So these can be very, very effective. I will remind the board that the applicant has made significant funding commitments to the town to advance infrastructure improvements in the town, not only along the Princeton Street corridor, but some of the side streets and the connecting streets that eventually lead up to the Middlesex Street just to the north. We've heard concerns about cut-through traffic, for instance, or the need for traffic calming measures. The applicant has committed funds to the town through their agreement with the town so that the town would have discretion on placing traffic calming signs and other features at strategic locations such as Beach Street, for instance, to address those types of issues. We do not expect that the project itself will cause or induce a lot of cut-through traffic. We believe that the vast majority of traffic that would be generated by this project would actually be destined directly from Princeton Street in the site to the Route 4 corridor, not through the neighborhood per se, but along Princeton Street, state jurisdiction roadway to Route 4, and eventually the regional highway system, or through to the east to the Lowell connection via Wood Street to the extent folks work more locally in the Lowell area, for instance. So we've addressed, we believe, all relevant transportation-related comments that most recently have focused on pedestrian accommodation and travel safety. This particular improvement being the most prominent among the commitments by this developer to improve that. So I'd be glad to answer any specific questions that the board might have at this time.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add a couple other things from the development agreement. Bob's hit on all of the actual installations of everything that we're going to do on site. But in addition to that, there's an additional $250,000 going to the town to advance their TIP plans for traffic improvement in the entire area. There's also the $100 per parking space that we're going to be creating on site that is specifically stated in the development agreement. And then Bob already spoke about installing all of the street signs for the cut-through. We've agreed to all of that. And then also working with staff to do any mass work grants over and above this that may be necessary for any traffic improvements in this area.
Nice. Any questions from the board?
So moving forward, what's left to review?
We're
You're
getting
gonna
down to the end of it, I
close the
think.
loop on Beta's peer review?
Yeah, I believe that really there's no major outstanding issues left on Beta's review. We think we should be able to address all their concerns and get a revised plan set to them in the next week or so. So we don't think there's
Okay.
anything major. And as to board concerns, I think we've addressed most of the board concerns, the department concerns, and we've responded in writing as well to any of the other departmental concerns which we've addressed. So
I would agree.
I'd move to approve with that contingency.
I would like to be able to
Oh,
review
you're gonna
the
review, all right.
No, you got to still.
landscaping plan.
But can we reasonably plan to wrap this up at the next? I think
I
we
would
can.
hope so.
Is the board interested or willing to start the 14th earlier than 7
We may have to.
Yeah.
for a special meeting?
Get these guys in first, maybe?
Could certainly
Are you
could do
bringing
that.
pizza?
We'll figure that out.
I'm up for that.
Would the 14th be enough for you to revise plans, issue final revisions,
Would it be enough for you to review
where
the
where we have enough time to get it
Yeah, I'm
back out
fine.
to all
Yes.
departments?
And I think that would also give us enough time to work on a draft for the
Yeah,
board to
it
review.
just requires a big table and an hour or so.
Yeah.
Of review.
Sounds like the
Probably a little more than an
14th
hour.
could work,
Okay.
and then the board just needs to consider maybe
couple
starting earlier than 7.
I think that would, can everybody here make it maybe, is 6 o'clock too early for this board? I mean, I can do it, but,
I can do it.
We can make it happen.
I can do.
Too early. I'm working till then.
6:30?
I can maybe do 6:30.
6:30 we could do.
Yep.
All right, let's make it 6:30.
I can do 6:30.
Okay, great. All right, then we'll get started a little early. It's going to be a long meeting, but, maybe we send out for pizza, I don't know.
You'll be first, 6:30.
Okay, sounds good.
Since we kept you waiting till the cows came home.
Just need a
All
motion
right,
to continue.
and now we are,
The public hearing.
we are in a public hearing, and I see some public, some well-known public back there.
I'm keeping my mouth shut for a change.
Billy?
What? Call Guinness Book. All right, would anybody, seriously, would anybody like to speak from the public on this?
Audrey's online. He's raised his hand.
Okay.
Thank you, members of the planning board. I just wanted to maybe thank Mark Baranski and Trammell Crow for the good work that they've been doing in terms of being, I think, what seems to be town and sustainability friendly. There may be still some discussions that we need to have in terms of what we can do in terms of energy usage on the buildings, but that's a separate conversation, and depending on when that goes on. But I do like, and I want to thank and congratulate in some sense the amount of effort that they have put in terms of being very, very open in feedback, and then how they have tried to build something pollinator friendly and low maintenance grass and lighting, dark sky initiative, and all those kinds of things, and walking friendly area. So thank you very much to that, and to planning board to keep that focus on. Thanks.
Thanks, and I think a lot of us share that sentiment.
Question, is there, the last time we spoke of it, I think you were looking into doing solar on the roof, and it hadn't yet been determined?
Mark Baranski, Trammell Crow Residential. With regard to solar, we're building solar-ready roofs, so they are structurally able to accept the loads. And I'm pretty sure we're also planning to put the panels on. We've engaged Select Energy for analytics, for placing them on the, as a matter of fact, we did commit to that last week, at the last meeting, because there were questions afterwards. And I believe those questions have been addressed in the peer review about the visibility of those solar arrays and whether they would create glare on residential butters, and the feedback was that they wouldn't.
Okay, that's
But
good.
that's in the beta's response.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Chris.
Chris LaValle, Precinct 10, Town Meeting Rep. Just a really quick question. Looking out for the residents in town, the owners of the property or properties where that proposed sidewalk is, have they been approached at all about that proposal? And
You mean the thing that connects to Lowell?
yeah,
I believe that's largely on.
One house, I
Wetlands.
think.
is it?
There's one house there, half of it is on the land that goes with this project, I think.
But it does look like there's a residence there, at
Yeah.
least one. So I didn't know. I was just curious if they had been approached.
Through the chair, Melissa, you can add to this. Any of the improvements that are being shown there are entirely within the public way. They would all be subject to Mass DOT review and approval, but we're not seeking any easements or takings from any private landowner. And as you correctly point out, the sidewalk extension, if it affects any property, would be the property proper, the applicant's property. So we're not seeking any easements, and there wouldn't be any need to secure discussions with any particular landowner. Certainly, I think it would be polite, if you will, that the developer at time of construction notify neighbors that construction will be impending, just to be a good neighbor, but not seeking any specific approvals or entitlements from private parties at this time.
Gotcha. Thank you. I think that covers it nicely. Okay, now.
Yeah, question.
Yep.
Request from, to Evan to get the new landscaping plan attached to the agenda.
Yeah, and we'll also get
The one that's
hard
currently
copy.
linked in is the old one.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, which brings us to this dramatic juncture in the narrative. We can continue it all. We could also close the public hearing, but I think it's wise to keep it open, just in case.
Mr. Chair, just because we haven't heard any closing comments from Beta and any feedback from Nan regarding landscaping, if we have to adjust anything or you need information from us, I would suggest
Okay,
we
then
keep
we'll-
it open to
all
the
right,
next
then
hearing,
let's leave
just to
it
make
open.
sure we're clean. Yep.
Okay,
Move to continue the public hearing.
Second.
moved, seconded, in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's continued to the 14th at 6:30.
Yes.
Got it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, folks. And which brings us close to, but not quite at, the end of the meeting. We have some citizens.
So,
Yep.
this was a carryover.
Yep.
There wasn't really intent to put this on the agenda.
All right,
It is
well,
on the agenda,
again.
and
On the
I think
agenda.
he did email that he was updating it. What's
Okay.
attached does reflect the updates.
Okay. Yeah, let's, if you could briefly give us what the updates are.
Sure, it should only take a half hour to an hour.
Chris, don't you dare.
No, I just wanted to highlight the changes I did make. On slide 5, Article 1, I removed the self-storage facilities as requested. On slide 7, Article 2, I divided up the general definition of distribution center into 3 separate definitions based on size that still follow the original intent of the proposal. I changed the small, medium threshold from 25 to 20 to align it with the
that
major
lines
business
it up with
complex.
the
Yep.
major
The
business.
special permits.
Yep.
Yeah.
Slide 9, or sorry, 8. Wait a minute. Slide 9, sorry.
9.
I changed the distribution, or the table, from 1 line to 3. Added the medium distribution permitted in IA by special permit, and added the small distribution center permitted in IA and CC by special permit.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Hopefully, the granularity of those definitions and the table will allow the board to be very proactive in the future, to adjust as businesses change, as the business models change. It would be great to revisit these on a regular basis to make sure that these are aligning with some of the business models out there.
Yeah.
Also, at the last meeting, there was a suggestion for a potential alternative way to address some of these issues. I believe Mike Walsh had that suggestion of looking at zoning overlays. And then Nancy also recommended an alternative in an email to me, updating the special permit criteria to potentially limit on truck traffic rather through residential. These are great suggestions. I would highly encourage the board to look at these alternatives as well. I don't think that doing this today and this through town meeting would preclude those other alternatives anyway. But this would help protect us in the meantime.
Okay. Got it.
And that is it.
Thank you. So what would our,
So this public hearing opens on the 24th
okay,
at 7 PM.
all right.
So that will go as long as you want it to go.
Can we say an hour? Or maybe 90
It's
minutes?
entirely up to the board. I would suggest to wait and see how many people are here for public comment.
Yeah, I agree. And
You
that-
also
that-
have NIMCOG scheduled to come back in for the zoning conflicts. So that could be, 8 to 9, depending on how this plays out. And also inform the board that the 24th doesn't have to be the beginning and end of that public hearing.
That's right.
There may be reason or interest to continue it based upon public comment.
Yeah, I'm thinking that we probably want to hear 45 minutes of it and then decide whether we need to continue and let people regroup or whether we've got, I know there's a lot of interest in it. On the other hand, we're going to have to be careful to not basically hear the same opinion over and over again.
Yeah, so you'll manage that.
What's the schedule for after that for the warrant?
The select board signs the warrant on September 12th.
So we're leaving ourselves in,
So you have you do not have a meeting between August 24th and August 12th.
Unless
Your
we
next one
schedule a
is
special.
September
That's right. We'd
14th.
have to do a special one, an extra.
Either
one.
that or be very confident coming out of the 24th that you don't anticipate any major revisions.
Right.
Or requesting any major revisions.
Right.
Yeah, that would be the point. If we can get to that point, then we have all the way to town meeting to give our actual, approval, or, our opinion.
Your recommendation.
Yes, our
yeah.
recommendation.
Yes. And so,
Okay.
two final items, all town meeting reps received email notification of the public hearing on the 24th.
Good.
That went out today. And 287 industrially zoned properties also received direct notification via mail.
Okay,
Okay.
it's a lot of mail.
287.
It'll be interesting to see what their
How many
response
of
is.
these are gonna come in?
Yeah.
Today.
All right,
Okay.
good. All right, Chris,
you.
thanks. So do we need to specifically continue anything? This was
Nope.
just a presentation, really?
Just
Okay.
Chris updating the board.
And
We're all
again,
set.
I would encourage if you guys think of anything, any specific suggestions for changes.
Yeah, we'll pop you a note.
Feel free to email me.
Okay, thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have 3 sets of meeting minutes, June 22nd, July 13th, and July 27th.
I have some edits to them.
Okay,
Can you email them to Becky?
Sure. Do you want me to list them? Because they're on a couple of,
I don't need them listed
want
tonight.
to-
If you could just email them, are they
Okay.
major or just minor?
minor.
Okay, I mean, if you want to list them tonight, then if they're minor enough, the board can vote to
we
approve
can
as
vote
amended.
to approve anyway, yeah.
All right.
Do you want me to just list them real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
The first one
I
is
have
on
one.
622. It says chair, the wrong chair is listed.
Chair reading,
That
yeah.
was right.
Yeah,
It's on page 410.
yeah, that was my one.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the other one was 727. I just had the title, they just had that I signed a potential conflict of interest. It's actually, the form name is a disclosure of appearance of a conflict of interest.
I think that's reasonable. Yeah, let's get that properly described. That it?
That's it. I can send these, but I'll
Thank you.
I'll send them.
All right, well, I think
Yep.
those are minor enough. I think we can go ahead and simply approve these with the changes as discussed.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second? In favor?
Aye.
Who seconded that?
I did.
Aye.
Was that for all three?
Okay,
Was that
so
for
you're all
three?
set. And Matt gets us nicely up to date on the meeting minutes, too.
Yes.
Okay, so the 24th, public hearing for citizens petition, that'll be at 6:30. No,
So-
that's at,
Seven.
that's at 7. Trammell Crow's at 6:30. We'll do a work session.
So there's 6:30 on the 14th.
Okay.
I have one, we don't have a new business on here, but I have one request for something to be put on the next agenda.
What's that?
Well, the sewer, the select board, I don't know if people are watching the select board meetings, but they're making it a major goal to come up with a plan, short and medium and long term, to deal with the sewer lack of capacity. And they're also starting to talk about a sewer bank,
Yeah.
and allocating sewer resources from certain businesses and landowners to others. And I feel like I would like for the planning board to have a seat at the table of these discussions. I think it's highly relevant to planning for the town. So I would like to have that on our agenda to discuss how that should happen, what we would like to have happen. And then, one other thing is, Virginia brought up the master plan implementation committee
Yep.
at the last meeting and talked about how it's on, that we are to be
Yeah.
We have one more appointment.
appointing it, and
We have to appoint a former member of the master plan update committee. So I
Okay.
was going to send an email out to those committee members,
Yeah.
asking which one, if any,
George.
are interested. I believe Scott Rummel expressed
Scott,
interest.
yeah, Scott might,
But I want to confirm that.
okay.
Confirm any of them.
But I mean, I think we should wrap that.
Yeah, I mean, I was targeting September, so we're
Yeah.
on. we're
Yeah,
on
that's
track.
about right, and I figure we'll probably call a meeting
Yep.
of that committee, probably before town meeting, just
Sure.
to say that we did it and have some plan going forward. I think we got some good members on that committee at this point.
And
I
then
think
one
it's
more
gonna be
thing is,
effective.
I would like to see if we could get an update on the schedule regarding the Glenview development and the abutter concerns.
They've all been resolved.
They're resolved?
Yeah, that was resolved. I have emails, I sent emails to the board.
Yep.
Project's been fully occupied and signed
Okay,
off.
Fine.
So that one's all set.
Are you hearing otherwise?
You know what, I thought I did, but I'm not, it's secondhand
Well, if you
information,
do, pass it
so.
around.
Okay.
It's secondhand information, so.
Motion to adjourn?
I don't know, should we allow this motion? All right,
Who seconded that?
everybody
I did.
did.
Everybody did.
Aye.
All in favor, aye.
Even though I was precluding it.
Bye-bye.
Aye, have a good night.